Good morning. Happy Sunday, Sussex Squad, Sussex Nation, Sussex World. Oh my goodness, my co-host online at the moment. And good morning, Charles and George. Happy Sunday to everyone. How are you guys doing?
Amazing. It's a beautiful fall day.
It is a beautiful fall day. Good morning, everyone.
But what I heard is, I think on Tuesday or Wednesday, it's going to be 80 degrees.
Yeah, this coming Tuesday up here.
Really?
Yeah.
Going up to
I mean,
80
that's
degrees
great,
again.
but at the same time, it's
Oh my
crazy.
God. There's a squeaky sound on my microphone. I don't know. This is why we need better mic, because this is like I could hear this feedback.
Need some WD-40?
What is that?
No, yeah, it's grease. You don't have to worry about that.
Oh, okay.
I'm getting clear over here. I don't hear any.
Well,
I don't
as
hear any
always,
squeaks.
everyone that's in the chat, if you let us know how we're sounding, we always appreciate that.
That's right. Before we get started, because we do have a packed show for you all.
Yeah, it's gonna be
And,
juicy.
well, I don't know. We'll let them decide whether it is or not. But interesting, I will say. Interesting.
Yeah, it packed is an understatement. There is a lot, and it's very exciting. We were excited about it last week.
That's right. And it's very difficult, actually, right now to do a show when I'm actually hearing my mother next to me. So hopefully she'll be staying a little bit quiet for me.
Yeah,
so I
she's
can
been
do the
spicy
show.
lately.
Otherwise, I'm going to have to be doing one of those back and forth thing, and you guys going to have to handle it for me. So expect, if you don't hear Lady Sussex speaking, then you know what's going on in the background. because I could hear her complaining about something. I just don't know what that is yet. Yeah, so happy Sunday, everyone. Have everyone hear the word over the week last week? The new accusations for Megan is that she's demasculine Harry.
Demasculating, yeah.
Okay, well, I don't even know what that mean. Can you guys, because you guys are guys, what does that mean? Because I'm trying to understand that word. I mean, Harry's certainly not making the transition, so I don't really know what that mean. Can you guys define the word for me? Because I don't get it.
That's an entire conversation in and of itself, because it has to do with sort of socially accepted definitions of masculinity, what it means to be a man. And there's where we've come from historically it's meant one thing, which is not actually in many ways accepted by modern standards. And we look back with a critical eye in terms of what has been historically deemed masculine. But yeah, that's a whole separate conversation.
And it's incredible because right after they make that accusation, going on and on and on and on, and then of course Harry show up as James Bond.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to me, in my opinion, anyway, Harry is the epitome. What, at least for myself, expecting a masculine man to do. He's so sportive. Like he's so sort of not scared, not afraid to do certain thing we associate to masculinity, I think. I mean, although women do all these things as well. But it's like, where are they getting that from?
I mean, at the end of the day, they have to say something, right?
That's right.
That's what it's about. I don't think we need to look any more deeper than that. Is the fact that they have to complain about something and pick a topic, and this is this week's flavor. That's all that it is.
I almost feel like in the background, the successes, like Harry and Meghan, or the people behind him, just have load of stuff. Each time they put something out there, and then they come up with something else, just shut them up and keep proving to people the liars that they are, the fact that they don't know anything. They don't know anything about the Sussexes, like Royal Sussex likes to say, there's no lakes, in Montecito. So, yeah, they have no idea what they're talking about. They still try to find an angle to go with to get people to actually, sort of either disagree or go after Meghan. And then over and over again, it's been not only been debunked in a way that's really embarrassing to these people, to those so-called royal Yodas, waters.
You really love that Yoda thing.
I'm getting
Royal
there.
Yodas.
I'm getting there. So, Charles, George, we have such a big show today, and so we're gonna need to get right into it. What's going on and
throw down some Church Nelly?
Yeah, because we can't talk too much, because otherwise we'd be here for 5 hours.
That is absolutely true.
Is that impactful?
Okay, so first and foremost, wanted to give a quick shout out to both Church Nelly as well as Black Queen for their 2-month membership anniversary. So what's up? That's fantastic. Thank you so much for that. You guys are awesome. As well as just everyone else who was in the chat. So
that's
right. And then you have Church Nelly, Lydea Washington, Black Queen. I mean, we have so many, Majesty Sussex Report, there's, Kenneth or Ash, all of you guys, thank you so much. You're amazing. So thank you. Now jumping into Church Nelly. This was actually something that popped into last week, but, we didn't have a chance because that last week's show was also fairly juicy, but that was actually when Charles and Camilla, depending on how you like to pronounce her name, went down under. And
I think they are under now.
They're still there. They're still in Oz.
I'm starting to try to get into trouble. I don't mean literally.
Yeah,
under. I mean,
yes,
down under.
They are still down under, I believe. But even prior to their arrival, Australia was still talking about transitioning to a republic. So it was still a big thing. And they actually had a referendum not too long ago, which they agreed actually to stay within the monarchy. But there's talk about it actually coming up again, to which Prince Charles was like, okay, yeah, well, whatever. It's up to you guys. So, which I thought was fairly lackadaisical response, especially the fact that his mother was so into the Commonwealth that he would just be like, kind of shrug it off. Okay, well, whatever you guys want to do. But it's pretty telling because what's actually happened is just recently they are actually invited the day they arrived. They're actually invited to this event, which it's a party, it's a thing, it's a welcoming thing. Like nobody showed up. Like,
Well, I don't
nobody
know if
showed
nobody
up.
showed
So
up. I think
no,
there's
no,
a
no, no, no.
thread that they're not going to
No,
show
no,
up.
no. They
did not
didn't.
show
It's
up at
already
all?
happened. They had 6 of the premiers of the Australia's 6 states:
Really?
New South Wales, Victoria, Queensland, Western Australia, South Australia, and Tasmania. None of their premiers showed up. They all sent like just somebody else, and they all, which makes it even worse, they all had bad, like actually no excuse. They didn't even offer an excuse. They were just like, we have other commitments. That was basically, they had other things better to do than actually show up.
Are you sure that didn't show? Or they had threatened? Because because that
Pretty
would be
sure that it
really-
actually already went down.
Oh dear Lord.
Pretty sure.
So let's just allege, because I did
yeah.
check, double check.
Pretty sure. I mean,
because
there's
know that there was a lot
several
of
articles. That's
conversations.
several articles that actually happened
Yeah.
about it, and those
Yeah.
articles were written last week.
Okay.
So-
I know.
But anyway, my point being is that it's really not a great look.
Not at all. Even
And it's-
having that kind of conversation, the fact that it was printed.
That's right. And then also, I think also is very telling and interesting about if you kind of compare, and we got this off of, who was it? It was Claire Kane, who actually, I think I had this discussion on her show when she was talking about, how different would it have been if Diana was actually still there, and
That's
it was
right.
Queen Diana, that, the overjoyed welcome that they received when
Absolutely.
they got married, and then basically no one's even willing to like show up and like give these people the time of day.
Yeah.
So it's just the dichotomy and the contrast here is pretty stark. So
But
it
'cause
just makes you think.
I think the mistake, maybe perhaps the media or the royal Yodas made is that
The royal press.
this
Let's just go
idea
press.
that Diana is still not present in our mind, in our memories. And so there is, you have to understand many of the older folks, or maybe around 60s, whether it's young kids or people that are adult now, remember vividly, who Diana was. And so I think there's a mistake somehow that maybe perhaps we forgot about what happened and how it happened. When you have someone like this woman, I call her, because I'm still trying to figure out what makes her a queen. How did she get this title? And so for me, I would love to know, what she's thinking. I would love to know her philosophy. I would love to get in and see, does she have a point of view? Not just, wearing, what Queen Elizabeth have worn the tiara and parade around and said, look at me. I really would love to know much more about this woman. And unfortunately, I don't know that will ever be. So until that I'm able to understand her point of view, who she is, what she is about, I'm going to probably continue calling her this woman, because it's hard for me to identify her and to many other queens or queen consorts that come before her when you kind of understand who they are, what they're about. So I don't know who this woman is, but I would love to say that, what Princess Diana, the real Princess of Wales, represent to everyone's mind. It's almost like yesterday, especially with what they're doing to Harry right now. It's almost like a reminder. They keep reminding us every single day what have happened. So the idea that, the thing that they will go to there with this woman, and somehow people was not going to have issues and problem with. I mean, hello, it's like deja vu for at least for King Charles.
Deja vu, and also as Connie and Julie just added with a super sticker, thank you so much, Connie, that the new traction is that Meghan ruined Charles' tour.
Oh, yeah. I was waiting to see when she was going to be blamed for that, because we actually should have something that the 100 things that we should blame Megan for. Really, I mean, it's a little at this point right now. We need to start keeping tap on. Blame it on Megan. Anything that goes wrong in the world, blame it on Megan.
I think we
Why
actually have to
not?
change her title from like Duchess to like Lord Overseer or something, because clearly she
That's
has
right.
command
Command,
of like
yes.
all of these things and all the travails across the earth. She's
That's
much
right.
she has a much higher title and aspect in being than us mere mortals, because she has effects on everything.
But in the meantime, we have this woman who now that we need to call Queen is not to blame for absolutely nothing at all. And I think many people will argue the reason why we are having so much of those issues is because of this woman.
Yeah, I think if you track it back to the source, I would agree with you. I
You
think
understand?
that I think that she actually she has created a riff, and I think supported a narrative of who these people are that they just prove every day that people just don't.
That's
like.
right, because they sells us on how we should look at the royals. One of the things that because there is this channel, I think like Sussex Love, that was doing an amazing job, pushing clips out, sort of almost like every single day, and one of the clip, was a reminder of the trip when Harry and Meghan was down under when they visit God, what was the name place that they went, that market that they went and visit. And then one of the women, the ladies, was talking about the fact that, prior to Meghan, if a royal visit, you literally have to wait until you spoke to. You cannot. And here this woman come in and just having conversation with them like they are people, recognize that they are people like nothing. It was such a difference. Of course, what we know, they rush her out and they never say why they rush her out. And I wonder if at that moment, the impact she was creating, what she was doing, that's what the problem was. I don't know. But it just feels like there's never really a true explanation. Why is it that, she was rushed out of there, talking about whether her staff was not, sort of experienced or whatever. But at that time, if I recall, most of her staff was from Kensington. So there's something just still unsettled for me in that moment because how well the tour was going on.
Yeah, it's absolutely possible. I mean, there's lots of hangups, I think, for all the other royals.
Let's continue.
But let's move on, because
That's
again,
right.
this is going to be a long show. The next basically is the red dress is still in the press, still there.
14 days later.
So honestly, still don't understand it.
We need
she
to
always
understand it.
no
We need to
because
understand that.
she always looks great. She looked great in that dress. That's the story. She looked really great.
They call impact.
She always looks really good. So I don't understand what the story is. But anyway,
because in that dress, in that red dress, there's many things to hate Meghan for, like how beautiful she looks, the fact that not too many women can wear things that with very simple, does not need even jewelry, just be so present and have this present, that air about her that many of those haters, those people that will hate her, would love to have. Would love to be able to show up a place fresh face.
no, I agree.
The
My
fact
point
that she
being
seems like
is
to be aging backward. That's also a problem to many of the people that are hating her. Because I mean, I don't like to talk about people, how people looks. This is not my thing. I think people send God just the way they are, and we should love people, whatever that you look like. But when you looked at the folks that is talking about her, that's giving her a hard time, then you understand maybe that's where the hate also is coming from.
But my point being is that is just who she is and has been for a long time.
I know.
And so it's not as if things have this is a different thing.
I know.
like,
I understand that.
It's not a different thing.
But the thing
so I don't,
is
so
that,
get up. My point. Get over your hang up.
it's-
Obviously, they needed something to wrong.
We are in a place where, for many women, specifically women that who is not satisfied with themselves, who not comfortable in their own skin, always looking to the next best thing to improve their look. Not that I have any problem with that as well. Take care of yourself, whatever it is that mean. But if it's coming from an insecurity place, and you see this woman that who probably will represent everything that you would like to be in, and you can't, and you don't understand, and you don't get it, that's enough to drive some women crazy, like those women that who goes after this woman on daily basis. Do you understand? It's not only that, for some of them, she killed that fantasy of theirs of Mary Prince Harry. I don't know why would they think that. But the fact that the way she presents herself, she's the epitome of what they have told us a princess need to be, should look like. And she does it very effortless. Effortless.
Yeah, I agree.
In my opinion, of course.
So, thank you to V-Brain. $5 super sticker. You're awesome. And then also her opinion is that in her opinion, the monarchy will not last another 10 years. Just like a rotten tree on the inside, they will suddenly fall.
To which Connie Angie added the over-under is actually on 2 years. So we'll see.
This is what I will say. I don't know whether it's today or tomorrow, but what's clear to me is that they need to change. Whether or not they choose this moment to actually do something about it and actually change, modernize themselves, because there's especially for the youngs, right? They need to feel a sense of they can relate. And there's nobody currently that in the royal family that for what's our society now can actually say that they relate to, because the person, like somebody like Harry, somebody like Meghan, that you can see, you can relate with, or whatever that we come to expect what a royal's supposed to be doing, so-called working royals, they chase them out. So if they don't change, yes, I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
not that
lose there.
I mean, I have no skin in the game, whether they go or stay. That's something for the people in England to decide, and the people from the Commonwealth. However, I think that, there is a call out for them to modernize, because they are certainly feeling the effect of it all over around the world.
For sure.
And you should know, Charles, because you sort of pretty much, part English and part Australian.
I'm not. Pretty much, I am.
Exactly.
So
On Tuesdays.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Go ahead.
The next is the article that everyone has been loving, and I think it got universal praise. Honestly, is when Harry basically turned into a true Californian. So all of a sudden, this dude is like surfing and obviously doing it very, very well. And was had that nice video with surfing legend Ron Van Bassar. Surfing was clearly a place in his heart for quite some time because, one, he was just good at it. And also, if you remember, that was actually one of the chosen charities that they supported during their wedding. So the charity, actually, let's see if I wrote it down here somewhere. Yes, it was called Surfing Against Sewage. It was actually the charity they supported during their wedding, and it was one of the things that instead of a gift, you could actually go and support these charities.
Yeah, there were several.
Yeah, there was several, but this is one of them.
Right.
And then apparently this was like that actually gave them that particular support during that event, during their wedding, gave that charity the largest event, the largest bump in their history. So they did a tremendous job after that.
Again, this is what those, the two, the Sussexes,
That's what they
bring.
do.
Yeah,
That's right.
That's what they do.
So now something that I personally am very wondering about is I'm just waiting to see what kind of forced photo op is going to happen on the royal side to try and combat or just try and divert attention or glom onto attention of what actually is happening with this surfing thing, because it has gotten around a lot and they can never just let a sleeping dog lie. They're always going to have to show something. So they're going to trot out
I think there
somebody
was something out there. I don't know.
and put him
whether
on
it
a
was-
pony or
Yeah.
do something that's going to make him look kind of quote unquote sporty.
Yeah, as I was doing research for the show this week, and it's almost like, because me personally, I mean, sometimes it hurts me that I even have to say anything really remotely bad or about Williams, but it's almost like you can't walk away from it because he didn't become who he is today. He's been like that forever since he was a child. There was always that competition. The fact that Harry was so good of skiing, or sort of when Diana say, if you don't come, I'm gonna give it to Harry, and all of a sudden that he's running, or the two of them standing up in front of the helicopter, and he kind of like sort of say something that I feel, in my opinion, that was, I think many people say that wasn't true. It's almost like there's always that competition, and it continues even to when Harry got married, the fact that he was so upset, the fact that Harry got to have his beer, to the fight that he had with Harry. And of course, for me, one of the things that's so scary about that fight, because if I get it right, when he came in to see Harry, it wasn't really so much for Harry, from what I understand. It was to see Meghan. And so you wonder, if Meghan had been there, what would happen?
Yeah, and our co-hosts will keep us honest in terms of remembering that intention. If that was originally, if he was trying to show up when it was just Meghan and not Harry. But yeah, to your point, would put an entirely different lens on what happened.
That's right, because there's a lot of questions that have not yet been answered. And I know Harry have alluding to so many things, and so many things that we know that happen. And we have to take, Meghan at her word when she said that, I have not even begun scratch the surface on what happened to her.
Yeah.
And there's still no explanation to what happened to Guy Legs, her dog, her beloved dogs, to what happened to Archie, her first week or two, maybe month
When they were in
of
Africa?
life. No, it was not in Africa. That was in his nursery where they live. Then push you to Africa with the fire. So if you put all of it together, how could we not have the questions we have? Why is this happen?
Yeah, it's all pretty shaky. But our wonderful co-host, and I'll just say, Church Nelly said that the Unroyal showed pics of Silly Willy waterboarding to counteract Harry's surfing.
Oh, really? I
Yep.
have not seen this.
Yeah. So, and then one of them also bet that William plays pickleball.
Yeah, that's Connie and Julie. You're on. Both of you and Church Nelly on fire today.
Yeah, they
Oh
are.
my God. This is where it's at every Sunday,
It's hilarious.
before service begin, right?
It is. It is.
So there we go. So come and visit us and subscribe and share, because
Oh, yeah,
it's
true.
a party. Now I'm learning to.
We're learning from Black Queen.
Black Queen. That's right. Sort of, because it's a family affair. That's what I
right.
will say.
That's right.
Speaking of family affairs, another contribution from the co-hosts, and Vera Sow saying that drunken Camilla's greetings in the crowd in Australia and can't look at people in the eye because she was so drunk. What a
Oh
disgrace.
dear Lord.
Yeah.
Like
Oh
that-
dear
that
Lord.
drunk uncle.
I really truly want to, at some point, do really a research on this woman to figure out, her whole, what is going on there, and why she is, why she's so protected, because they protect this woman like there is no tomorrow. And so at some point, I would love to know why. What is it about? Because she's the epitome of what story should be like, that so-called the royals, those worders who want to talk about and gossip about, and sort of, why? Like, it must be something. There must be something.
Yeah. No, there definitely is. And it's, yeah.
Or is she the mole for the media? Maybe that's probably a question that I have. Because again, for everything that, we hear, that this monarchy, the way it's going, it's very soon may not be there. But what if her whole purpose of living and being, it's to do just that?
Well, she's doing a bang-up job.
Because I just don't get it. I just don't get it.
Some people just want want to do their own thing and don't care. As long as they get what they want, the world can burn.
Because
so who knows?
For me,
Who knows?
the way I looked at it, according to everything that I've read, King Charles' issues with Diana, not only just how popular that she was, specifically after they've been down under, and how horrible he makes her feel during that trip. And people comes to see her, not him. And I think if I'm right, there was a quote where he says that, he needs 2 wives or something. Who knows, at that time everybody that he had already had
About to say
another
sounds like-
one. But let's just say now, he's not getting still with this wife that he has, he's not getting the attention. And I will argue she is the reason why. She might be the reason why. And so, what should he do then? Should he get rid of her?
No. Well, yeah, I think
if his whole
I
psyche
think-
is because that at seeking,
I think he has moved on to another phase of his life. I think Charles is just happy playing in his garden and doing whatever he's going to do and whatever. I think he's just in a different place.
Right.
But let's just jump back
Oh,
on
my
here
goodness. I
we
told
need
you,
to
it's-
finish
it's
up.
really
Yeah, we need to
hot.
wrap this up. Yeah,
That's right.
this is just starting. This is just a
Just
warm up.
starting. Oh my God.
Okay, so in the last little piece of news that we'll have from around the way is basically there's been a lot of press about Harry and Meghan buying a place in Portugal, which on its face sounds amazing. I mean, I wish I had a place in Portugal. But there's obviously, we have to take this with kind of a bit of a grain of salt. Apparently, the story was broken by the Daily Mail. So we all know what that means.
Always looked at the sources.
That's right. And I certainly hope they did buy a place, but it's just weird to me that the same press that's calling them irrelevant is now like digging through their garbage or doing whatever they have to do to find out every little microscopic detail, because that there was nobody in their camp that was like releasing this stuff.
There's even
So they clearly had to go the extra mile to like dig this stuff up. There was no press release about what they're trying to do.
I mean, for those of you guys who's probably on the chat now, my co-host maybe have seen Claire yesterday. I think there was one article that she was quoting that they are even now talking about comparing her with the Alice. I thought she was not. I mean, it's like it's depending what day it is.
Yeah, whatever argument they have, they'll just throw up and make up some new facts for it.
That's right. They are so confused. I think these people, they need.
Well, they just think
They
that
need
nobody
help.
pays attention.
That's
They
right.
just think that nobody actually has any kind of like long-term memory at all. They don't even even medium-term memory. They don't even need long-term memory. But anyway,
Yes, let's move along.
moving along. So that's basically it for Church Nelly Report. So, and Church Nelly, we do thank you for that $5 super sticker. You are awesome. We
Thank
don't want it
you.
to take away from your wig layaway fund, nor your bail, nor your stripper fees, apparently, or tithes and offering, or either your moonshine ingredients. So
What
all
about
of,
Nacho?
yeah,
Did she
or
give up on Nacho yet?
her nachos? No.
No. You know what I mean? What's his name? The polo player?
Oh yeah,
Harry's
off
brother.
on nacho. Yes.
Yes.
So I'm sure she has not. That's probably what she's saving the wig for, is so she can go talk to him.
Oh,
But
my goodness.
Church Nelly, you're amazing as always keeping it hot and fresh and funny. So jumping on to the Connie Bomber. We still need to actually get the that clip from Barron to do that
Yes.
properly. But going on to the Connie Bomber update. What's up? So first and foremost, we'll jump into the prayers as we always do. So continued prayers for Barron, just as hoping he continues to feel well. Black Queen, we also know, and actually we'll have a little thing a little bit later on, that your daughter is graduating in 4 days. So, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, you're actually traveling to go see her graduate.
That's right. Safe journey.
In a very little bit. So safe journey, and certainly, give our love to your daughter. That's fantastic. To Claire Kane, to Dorothy Ross, to Fatima, to Miss Clutch Sussex, to Sylvia, and Chef Sandy Lover. You guys are still in our prayers. You still know what's going on.
You should correct that.
There's you got an extra R in Chef Sandy Love's name.
Oh, is that what it is? Chef Sandy Lover. So apparently you are loving
it's-
Sandy.
Chef Sandy Love.
Chef Sandy Love. Pardon me.
The thing.
So I've been
was so-
saying that for weeks, and
it's
you
so
people have been
funny.
letting me run with that for
After
weeks.
each show,
Give me a break.
George will mention that, and I'm like,
Yeah.
this is the first time I actually hear it.
Yeah, I kind of like Chef Sandy Lover. Yeah, but I guess I'm just wrong. And then also birthday wishes to Claire Kane and Prince Dre.
That's right. Tomorrow is Claire's birthday, and Prince Dre, birthday was over the week. So happy birthday to you both.
Yes.
Right.
And then Angela Simmons, we're still certainly caring for you and praying about your vision problems. Those who were in the car accident, Sherry Ware and Rafaela for Lit for Sussex. So please keeping them in their prayers. And then also continued prayers for those who were affected by the hurricane, both of them, as a matter of fact. And that for Shirley Holland as well and her grandchild, Kyle.
Yeah.
And then actually, Church Nellie. Now, you've been causing a ruckus, as you always have, and yet you are not actually sharing with us what happened on the 19th when you got your stuff. So hopefully you're doing well and that everything checked out, but certainly you are also in our prayers as well, and also to Facts and 2 Cents, who lost her father. So you are certainly
That's
in our
right.
prayers as well.
Amen.
So Church Nellie, we certainly hope that you got some good news.
Amen. And also, too, that we do have a massive birthday coming up either 15 or 16 days from now. It's our very own Baron from Royal Sussex.
Oh, look at
Yeah. Yeah, his birthday is coming up either 15 days from now or 16 days from now. I can't reconnect.
Gotta go through his
When he mentioned it
his
on
wish
his
list.
show, it was 18 days. So if I'm counting down, if I'm right, it's either 15 or 16 days. So maybe somebody on the chat co-host can
Can keep
me
us
know,
honest.
keeps us honest, because
Yes.
he didn't say the date. He says the amount of days to his birthday.
Uh-huh. So, and Church Nellie just gave us a quick repost or update in terms of her diagnosis, and that's actually on the 29th. So
The
it got pushed
29th.
out. Yes,
Okay.
it got pushed out for 10
Wonderful.
days.
Okay.
So we will certainly keep that in mind, Church Nellie.
Amen.
And then that is basically it for prayers. Now the next thing is getting into the news
That's right.
and our support for our wonderful, wonderful Sussex crowd. So with that, actually, we finally received the Duchess of Sussex's
The book.
new
Yes.
book, Royal Codes, A Guide to Gracefully Breaking All the Rules and Finding Your Worth. So congratulations. One, the book looks terrific. We've read just a little bit of it, and so far, so good. It's fantastic. I actually have 2 excerpts from it that I'll actually read for you now so you guys can get a little taste of what this book is about, and certainly hope that you guys go and pick it up. So here's just basically the first paragraph.
That's right. I'm
of the
going to
intro.
let you sort of do the observe, and then after that, I'll make a comment, because I know people will say, "Oh, yeah, you love her," and so therefore, of course, you will say, her book is great, and we should go out and support it. But it's really, I think, not only we should support her because of the work that she put in the time, but what she wrote, it's really incredible. I didn't know what to expect going in, when I buy the book or say that I was going to support her, buying the book, because, right now we need more writers. We need people. And when she said she was going to do a royal book, of course I was very happy about it. But once the book arrived, the first thing that I do, I pick up the book and, I couldn't stop, but I had to stop because I have my mother. And I realized what an incredible book that, we actually need right now. In fact, some of the excerpt that, you're going to read, it goes on straight to what we probably going to be talking about. And I feel like this is the kind of book, if you do have, young girls, or even you deal with insecurity, or you deal with sort of, workplace harassment, or not feeling that, you're equipped, you're part. Like, I think this is the kind of book that, you keep in your car to remind you who you are, to remind you your worth, to remind you that, hey, that, it's whatever it is that you've been taking, especially when it comes to either breaking rules or, doing things very different, that, you know what, there is not only precedent for it and that you need to do it. It's almost like, you know what, the world and other women, you know, counting on that. And also what I think about the book is not, if you read, I mean, actually, I'm not done yet, but I will argue that, you know, even men, you know, deal with a lot of those issues that I think that book would sort of, you know, serve purpose. And what I also like that she does is that, you know, she leaves places to almost like to put you on, like almost a being a part of that book. Remind me of Megan when she did the Vogue cover, and then she have one place, you know, sort of where you can see yourself, you know, in the mirror. And I think the book, you know, it's like I already thinking of ideas and how you need to write it, almost like a diary, so to speak. And I really, really love it, and I really highly recommended it. So you can read this
Okay.
now.
So here's just the first paragraph from the introduction. So, introduction. Why breaking the rules isn't bad. Breaking the rule, it sounds very rebellious, doesn't it? What comes to mind when you see the words rule breaker? We often imagine them as unruly and disruptive individuals who revel in defiance for its own sake. We often think of rule breakers as people who reject norms just to attract attention, who dress outlandishly, or who disrupt the peace without purpose. This stereotype, however, misses some nuance. Not all rule breakers are bad. In fact, some have the most transformative and innovative figures of our past and in the present have been rule breakers who've moved society forward and in good ways.
Amen.
So that is kind of the first introduction, or the first
That's
paragraph of the introduction. And then I'll just give you one last little tidbit, which is in chapter 1. It's the first 2 paragraphs, basically, of chapter 1. And I think this really gets to the crux of what her argument is, which is basically never dim your light. Never be 50% of yourself for people who aren't even 10% of you. Too often we allow the expectations and insecurities of others to shape our actions, which can have lasting consequences on how we live our lives play out. Life is far too short and too precious to live in the shadows of someone else's comfort. Trying to make others comfortable by downplaying yourself will only lead to your own discomfort and losses. One of the biggest mistakes we can make is shrinking ourselves to fit into spaces that can no longer hold who we've become. We do this for many reasons: to fit in, to avoid conflict, or because we fear that standing tall might cast too long a shadow on those around us. There's nothing noble or gracious about diminishing your abilities, your talent, or your light to make others feel more comfortable.
100% agree. There's so much that I could say about this, but we have a big show, and I certainly will revisit the book again because we know exactly what she's talking about because we witness it. I'm having problems saying witnesses it with you know, our Duchess, especially in the interview with Oprah when she said the expectation was for her to be 50% of herself. You know what I mean? You know, so we know what that mean. We know, and for many of us, if not most of us, have experienced some of that, especially when it comes to women of color. It's almost like, you know, we always have to dim our light just to please others or to make people feel comfortable. Do you understand what I mean? So obviously there's so much we can get into, and I would love to review the book even more, but I will highly recommend it that, you know what, this is a book that, you know, we should have, you know, under the tree for somebody or send to somebody. You know, it's a very easy read, but it's a very important one. It's one that, you know, I feel like, you know, that we need to carry with us to remind us. So congratulations on that. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Well, that is basically the wrap for the Connie Baumer report.
That's right. And you can get the book in Amazon, and it get really to you very quickly. I think we order it and it got here 3 days.
Yeah, 2-3 days.
Something like that. Yeah, so very good. So what is next? Where do we go? It's
the show.
There's a lot. I guess I just want to mention it quickly though, just because we're not going to talk about it again for the rest of the service. The rest of it really is going to be a little bit more focused on Megan. But that title that you chose,
That's
in terms of redefining James Bond, well, I mean, the sort of the typical look that Harry has,
That's
he
right.
definitely can deliver on those that sort of that idea of what James Bond is in that sense, and he's got all the sporty elements, all of those things, the gentleman, all of those sort of traditional elements, the good ones. But he's also redefining his role in terms of it goes back to masculinity in terms of actually being able to talk about your emotions, about actually recognize that mental health is important, the role of therapy, all of the things that Harry's doing, like the way that you titled this episode in terms of redefining James Bond. There's probably a lot in that is worth an entire service in and of
That's
itself.
right. It's even further because what Harry is doing is almost like doing the impossible that no one expect that he would be able to do it and do it successfully, leaving the world, well, the institution, so to speak,
The firm, yeah.
the firm. Do you understand what I mean? And one of the thing is that it still ring in my ears hearing when he says that I know what's behind the curtain, and the fact that he's like not fear to confront the media right on. And who does that? How many people, and we're talking about whether it's celebrities, people with money, have ever even tried to take the chance to go against these giants?
It's true.
And so if you are thinking in an ideal world of what the kind of mission, the kind of things that, James Bond do, for those of you that were fan of James Bond, like, I feel like, you could put Harry right there if he's doing it real life.
No,
That's right.
he definitely he definitely took a
yeah.
huge risk.
In so many ways.
and then also definitely stood up for who he is and definitely showed some backbone. So that is definitely very true.
That's right.
And with that being said, we'll make a note that is a full topic for more discussion on a future episode, because there is so much planned for today. And with that, closing out the first half, we have to, as always, do our sincere thank yous. Thank you to everyone who helps us remind us that we need to ask people to subscribe and share and like and do all of those things. Thank you for those who do that as well. Thank you for everyone who listens, who tunes in, who is joined as a subscriber, who is also especially our members who support us on a monthly basis, as well as everyone who has been contributing in the chat with super stickers and super chats. It really does make a huge difference, and we are deeply, deeply appreciative of it. In terms of our members, just want to shout out each of them because we really do appreciate it. We have for the longest duration now, we're up to 17 months for our longest member, and that is Patrico Marcel, followed by Marvel Walker, R.R. Carter, V. Brame, Antonio TC416, April Showers, Church Nelly, Black Queen, Kate Castillo, Eve Bomber and Connie Bomber, Sylvia Fielder, V. Thomas, Lady Rose, Bryce Thompson, the one and only Royal Sussex, as well as, who actually just rejoined, and it's so great to have you back, Lydia Washington.
Merci à tous.
And in terms of just a final bit on this section, because I know there's a lot to get into, but it's a nice segue actually to what I know you're going to be talking about quite a bit, Lady Sussex, is just a shout out to one of the comments on last week's
That's right.
service, which is actually
Exactly.
coming from Moonstone 1159, who commented that it is not just a project of historical erasure of Meghan, but of the eventual attribution of Meghan's great qualities and successes onto Kate, the future Queen of England. The bivalent project might explain why Kate copies Meghan's fashion and personable style, for example, hugging. In fact, William and Kate copy both Harry and Meghan on a regular basis when it comes to behavior, style, and projects. Harry serves this purpose too.
I will say this, based on the research that, we are doing now and we're looking at into things, my argument is, whether I don't know that to be factual, but my argument is right now that, if we are to believe what these writers and this argument that is now being made of, erase history. So you can argue that, the whole reason that, they are removing, Meghan is an icon. She is a fashion icon. That's just what it is. Not because, yes, she doesn't wear very high fashion, but what she wore, it's make a statement in itself. I will argue, many of those very, very high, fashion, $1 million clothes, you rarely see them live. You know what I mean? You only see them sort of, in the one way. But that woman she's the epitome of what fashion is. And so if you would to, when somebody Google royal fashion, if you don't want Megan to show up, you will not want her. If you try to erase her for something that somebody is looking, some type of search, a trend code, then all of a sudden that who will appear would be Kate.
Right.
Do you understand what I'm saying? And so it's starting thinking like, why is that, maybe perhaps, in my opinion, they all try everything that Megan wear, that, a Princess of Wales, included her husband. It's almost like sort of having them have that style so people, it's no longer available to Harry and Meghan.
It's interesting though because of the love and because of just the platform, the larger platform that Meghan has, I don't know if they'll be able to put that genie back in the bottle, because even if you search like royal fashion, Meghan still will probably outrank what Kate does, just simply because there's more people interested in it. So it'll be interesting to see.
Actually, I want to put, I'm not going to, because it has to make sense in context of the discussion later, but I want to come back to that because there's a very interesting thing that comes up from search in terms of the research that we were doing. And in that, just want to remind everyone before we kick off the service that even though this is a service, we're not evangelical in that we're trying to convince anyone to change their beliefs. We are here to ask questions, to highlight those who we believe are doing good work on the front lines to make the world a better place. People like Prince Harry and Princess Meghan. And as always, we want to remind everyone that we are not experts. We do not claim to be. We do our research, but we would encourage everyone else to do their research. And I know, Lady Sussex, we were talking about it for this week. It's one of those weeks heading into the service where the more research we did, it's exactly like that favorite philosopher of yours, in terms of the Socrates saying, the more that I learn, the more I know. The more I know, only that of my ignorance.
It's the fact of my ignorance.
Exactly.
But there's a lot of scholar that will argue that whether or not that he actually really did say that. And so again, here we are. Did he say that or did he not say that?
We're going to plumb history. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So it makes the point. But, I will add on, Idris, we are now very fortunate to have many informations available to us for those of us who like to do research on different topics. However, I will like to add, we do need to be very, very careful where we obtain our news or, sort of informations, because you never know what the agenda of whoever the person that, is providing these informations. And so just be very, very careful. That's what I will say. And we are here. We try to ask questions and we try to use as many information, whatever that's available to us, but we have to take it as a grain of salt as well too. And then sort of, ask even more questions, because again, like you said, the more you know, the more you find out that you absolutely know nothing and you want to get deep in, because the people we expect to do that kind of work, to actually really explain and answer questions, are now not doing it. They're doing the opposite. You know what I mean? And just reversing things, which is, I guess many people will argue that it's an ongoing thing that's been happening. So just be careful. That's what I would say. So let's get into the service. Well, where are we? Last week we get into this discussion. Just a reminder what the word was. Do you guys remember what
you are not setting the stage nearly enough for what everyone needs to be ready for right now. I'm just gonna say, everyone better buckle up, because we're about to go on a journey that honestly was eye-opening for me personally. It's been crazy. That's why we were so excited to get to this week's service. Last week, and there's a lot. There's a lot. But
And
to
you
your
c-
point, we got to start with where we started last week in terms of that foundation.
Yes. So the word we had last week was called revisionist history.
That's right. But you know what I want to say, just so you guys know, my co-host and everyone that was listening, is that all the way to maybe 5 minutes to the show, I was driving you guys crazy.
Only 5 minutes?
Like,
This
you
is a
know, okay,
fairly-
no, we gotta change this. No, we have to do this. We have to do that. And sort of, I have to show you guys this article.
Are you
So-
indirectly explaining the difference in time between when we tell people we're going to start at 12:30 and when we actually start at 1:10? Is that what you're explaining?
I should not take all the blame, but anyway, I will say that, sort of, yes. So we did have,
But you will.
we do have the revisionist history. So I would love for you to go back, Charles, to actually read some of
So
Some
reread
of
the definition
the
of
definition
what we're talking about?
before we can get
Let's start the-
into a new word for this week.
Right. All right. As we imagined. So as we said. So this is going to be a quick recap of revisionist history. So what was mentioned last week is that this definition is actually from an article from Contingent Magazine from 2019. And when used and basically what a revisionist history is, when used as a criticism in everyday conversation, revisionist history refers to a conscious, intentional misstatements about things in the past, whether distant or recent. It can be used in the context of personal lives and relationships, the cause of an argument, for instance, or in political and cultural discussions. At the time I was writing this, for instance, it was being used in Twitter conversations about Tom Brady, Obama's 2008 presidential campaign, the Iranian nuclear deal. Those are just kind of the things at which she basically was saying this is kind of how revisionist history was happening in real time when this person was writing this article. And unlike someone saying it's being forgetful or getting confused about what happened or accusing them of practicing revisionist history, is actually accusing them of being a bad actor, a liar, in fact, by playing fast and loose with the past and the facts. And in most cases, accusing a historian of practicing revisionist history is actually accusing them of framing a historical figure, an event, or a narrative in a very disordered and as well as a dishonest way in order to advance a particular social or a political agenda. They're accused of minimizing or even ignoring evidence that would disprove their argument or prove an argument of those who disagree with them. Those invested in the term and its use often claim that they're defending history from people who are trying to actually warp it and use it as a weapon.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, we are not here, especially someone that like myself that who love history, saying every historian are somehow that sort of like to redefine things. But when I looked at what the Royal Yodas are doing, we have to look at it in that lens, because for many of these people, they are the historian that who wrote so many things about the royals and what is going on. They are the one that sort of some of the universities are doing research on or talking about. They the one that who's informing us or who's supposedly expert in the royals. But those are the same people right now that we are seeing that's doing so much damage, not only to their craft as writers, as historian, but they're going after a woman for the last 8 years that is not head of state. Let's take a moment and observe this. This is not a woman that somehow that you may have issues because of her politic view, because somehow she's in charge of something that defined,
she's not in charge of policy. Yeah.
policies or something like that. This is a woman that come on the stage that decide, you know what, I'm going to give up my career just to focus on doing good in the world. And I did that before I met this prince. And that is something that I want to continue. And they marry each other, they love each other, and they realize what they both of them can do in the world. And then for the last 8 years, this is what we're dealing with. So I think for us is that so many arguments they put out there just don't make any sense. And we try to figure out why. Why is it so? How do we go back into history to find out have we have dealt with situation like that? And I will argue I don't know we have.
Well, yeah, and I think that that's actually that foundation from last week in terms of revisionist history. To what Charles mentioned, there is a significant element of it in terms of how it's used is understanding the intention behind why history is being revised in terms of representing the truth in a different format, in a different manner, or in an untruthful way. But some of the other things that we were talking about, and this again it was brilliant. This choice that you'd made, Lady Sussex, in terms of setting it up this way, is that when you talk about revisionist history, some of the ideas are that there's an intentional element of revisionist history, but there's also scholars and philosophers and people who think about this who are suggesting that to a degree all history is revisionist because it fundamentally includes the writer's, the historian's own context, their personalities, their own biases, their views. As much as they may try to separate it out and make it objective, it is impossible to separate the human writer from the history that's being written. And to what you just mentioned, Lady Sussex, of what's happening today with Meghan and how she's being covered in the press. One of the really important things from that discussion was this idea that there is a very big difference between history and the past. And the past is that objective thing that we all share. We're all living in this sort of same world together. And once it is gone, it is gone. It is only recoverable by artifacts, by things like what was written about in newspapers, by pictures that were taken, by monuments that were built, and if they survive. All of these things that are ways for us to get back and sort of recreate what happened in the past. And that's how we talk about history. That's how we write it up.
That's right.
But ultimately, what's really important about what the Royal Rota and all of these different sort of press outlets are doing today is that what they're writing and how they're covering Meghan and how they're talking about her specifically, it is the creation of those artifacts that will then also be used by historians.
That's so really what's scary about it, because there's some incredible historian in England. There's this lady, oh my God, I cannot think of her name. I should have thought about it. She have red hair. She's incredible. And I love her, and she have come out in different Meghan so many times. But many of the world roaders have been privileged to sort of be the one that was writing books, whether it's on that woman or Charles or other, royals, right? And we can see the effect of it, where maybe prior there would be a huge interest, and many of those books fell. And you wonder why. You wonder why those books sort of never get what they expect is going to get. Because the same people are now actually putting things out that we know that is not factual true. And they try to erase, they say something on Monday, on Tuesday, they say something else that's sort of, the contrast of what they say on Monday, it's so very different, and it's insane. It is insane. And so for me, where we are right now, if you are a writer and you're a historian, you are from the Royal Rota, I'm sure you notice what's happening into your pocket right now. The fact is that, you know what, from what I understand, there was many of them that have saying that, now they cannot even afford their mortgage, to not making money that they will normally make once they put a book out. So it's not like they're not seeing the effect of it or they're not feeling the effect of it, but somehow they can't stop. But why? Why, that is the question that, we have not yet been able to fully answer, as ridiculous as, you know, they sound many times in the stuff that they put out that we don't get. That's what lead us to the word slam last week and to this word this week. That the word the word for this week is iconoclasm.
Iconoclasm.
Correct. I think I say it correct. What do you say? I say it correct.
Yes, Yoda. Okay.
So go ahead. Yes.
Okay. So iconoclasm was first used in 1641. And there's two definitions of it. The first being is an action of attacking or assertively rejecting cherished beliefs and institutions for established values and practices. The second is a rejection or destruction of religious images as heretical and the doctrine of iconoclasts. So that's basically kind of what the traditional definition of what that happens to
No,
be.
say it again because I really was not paying attention because I'm looking at my mother. On the
Wow.
side here. I am
At least you're being
and I'm
honest.
sure. Please say it again. I'm sorry. I'm
Are you
sure many
listening?
and the words, obviously. Yes.
Okay, here we go. Try it again. For the iconoclasm, it was first used in 1641. The action and what it means, the first two definitions, is that the action of attacking or assertively rejecting cherished beliefs and institutions or established values and practices.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And the second is basically a rejection or destruction of religious images.
Images.
Yes.
Mhm.
So that's basically what it is. Those
Right.
two things. That's the traditional definition.
Very interesting.
Yes.
Yeah.
So now there's actually, as we kind of break down the definition a little bit more, the iconoclast actually comes from Greek, and it translates literally to an image destroyer. That's the actual literal definition of what it is from ancient Greek.
Yeah.
While the destruction wrought by today's iconoclast is figurative in modern use, an iconoclast is actually someone who criticizes or opposes beliefs and practices that are widely accepted. The first iconoclasts directed their ire at religious icons, those representations of sacred individuals used as objects of veneration. The Byzantine Empire's iconoclastic controversy occurred in the 8th and 9th century, but the word iconoclast didn't actually find its way to English until the 17th century,
Mm-hmm.
and its figurative use actually came much later. Now, just to dig in just a hair more in terms of, okay, well, they mentioned the Byzantine Empire. What we're actually talking about is actually during the reign of Leo III, who was the emperor of the Byzantine Empire between 717 and 741. And so it was actually did not become an official policy until his son, which is Constantine the fifth.
The fifth, yeah.
And they actually began banning the making of icons in
That's right.
754.
That's right. I've read a lot about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was reinstated, and then they actually did it again. But their whole, I'm just going to summarize here very quickly in terms of what it is, just because there's other meat we need to get to, is basically what they were doing is they thought that it kind of stems from this idea that the second commandment that was given to Moses, which is thou shalt not make any graven image, thou shalt not bow down before them, is basically he thought the images of Christ, Mary, the saints appeared to be increasingly important to the church in the 6th and 7th century, and they questioned their legitimacy, fearing that the veneration of actually those icons was basically tantamount to idolatry. And so they were trying to get back to more emphasizing the possibility of depicting Christ's divinity. And so that's what they basically kind of wanted to get those things out. So as opposed to like trying to venerate, Mary and all these other things, they wanted to basically just venerate the act, which is basically the cross. So that's kind of where it all kind of came from.
Right. A lot there. There's a lot there. I'm looking at you, George. So,
Well, I'm just going to start by saying thank you for choosing this word and bringing us this research and this content, because it really has been tremendously eye-opening. And it's also
so you can actually understand what my dissertation is going to be about.
exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Doing research. Okay. Go ahead.
But it's really been an interesting word to look into, because it has, as Charles just mentioned, has some very specific definitions and applications. But it also, there's a lot more to it in terms of how it has existed historically in social contexts and everything that's associated with it. And I'm actually, some of the things I'm just going to read now and these different sources actually highlight the very different feelings that different groups of people have for this word and this idea to begin with.
That's right.
People are coming from very different places. So I'm going to share these not to say that they are necessarily right, but to share these sources because they are actually really valuable in just understanding the word, and not just the word itself, but this sort of movement around iconoclasm, how it has existed in society. And the first of which is actually, it's titled Iconoclasm as Necessary to Progress, published by Percy Douglas in the North American Review, and that was actually 1889. So just giving you context of where he's coming in when he's writing this in the context of North America specifically, with the idea that iconoclasm is actually necessary to progress, as he titled it. And he writes that the American is by nature and education an iconoclast. To this fact, we owe nearly all our moral and material progress. Had we set out with the idea that the past is sacred because it is the past, and that its relics and institutions must therefore be cherished and preserved, we would still be what we were just before the Revolution, a little cluster of provinces reflecting the ideas of feudal Europe. By cutting loose from the past and when the need arose, destroying its institutions, we became what we are today, the most progressive nation on the face of the earth. The revolution itself was a gigantic act of iconoclasm, which stamped us as barbarians in the estimation of Europe. The organization of a state without a religion was another act of iconoclasm, which surely ought to have called down upon us the vengeance of heaven if the men who believed in the old order of things were right. So, too, the refusal to perpetuate many of the social customs and traditions of the past was an act of iconoclasm, of which, in the opinion of Europeans, only Vandals could be guilty. Nevertheless, we have gone right along prospering until at last many of those who began by denouncing us on this score are now beginning to think that iconoclasm may not be such a bad thing after all. And I think that's very, very interesting because it is actually a totally different.
Interesting. It's a totally very different mindset,
yeah.
and I think that's why there's so much debate around that particularly word, whether or not that what they think that it is something that society needs, and if so, but what are also the damages.
Right, and I mean that is part of what he kind of expresses in that is that sort of the creation of something new by the rejection of what was, and that idea, that kernel of truth, persists through, and is actually perhaps even clearer in this next journal, which is titled "The Politics of Iconoclasm."
Mm-hmm.
And it's a book review, and the book review is of the politics of iconoclasm, religion, violence, and the culture of image breaking in Christianity and Islam, by James Noyes, and is reviewed by Natalie Carnes. And actually, it was published as a review in 2015. And just as she opens up the review, she writes that a growing number of scholars across disciplines have been unseating understandings of iconoclasm as an unequivocally destructive phenomenon.
Yes.
Iconoclasts not only break and destroy, such scholars point out, but they also make and transform. Contributing to this conversation about iconoclasm's ambivalence, James Noyes asks in his book, The Politics of Iconoclasm, how iconoclasm helps to make the modern nation state. In part one, he focuses on Calvinism and Wahhabism as two prototypes of modern iconoclasm in order to identify a coherent politics of iconoclasm, which he traces in part to across 5 cases of the modern trend.
Right.
Through these prototypes of cases, he wants to describe iconoclasm as it crosses religious traditions and it is distinctly modern in that it contributes to the creation of a modern state. So the reason why I thought this source was specifically interesting in terms of the conversation we're going to have is that it is that recognition of this dynamic, the role of iconoclasm as something that is doing both of those things. It is destroying what was there, and it is replacing it, is creating it, it's transforming it to be something that is totally different. And it is fundamentally political.
I actually think there's never been a time in our life right now where that debate need to be taken. I think it is something that, we should really consider and, sort of bringing into university and actually debate that. I really would love to debate that. I want to debate that.
And this
Yeah.
is maybe the last thing I'll say, because I know we have a lot of clips that you want to go through, but just in terms of sources, and there's a
That's
few,
right.
few more to add in throughout the conversation, not right now, but the last thought is that even this word specifically, and in the context of the research that you brought and the conversation we're about to have, there really is a lack of coverage, a lack of research of
The-
that specific dynamic that we're
And I
about to
think
talk
it's
about.
because of that reason, because everybody's coming at it, out of a very different angle. And so if we had to apply that, how that's, what is happening to Megan, and how we see it, how we view it, how we interpret that, sort of why is some of it seems to make sense, sort of maybe make sense to the world ruler and the people that's doing the damages to us who's defending Megan. Do you understand what I mean? And then you begin to see sort of like, okay, so where do I come in here? And I think it is really important to sort of play some of the clips just to remind people the vulgarity, the sort of, abuse and what Megan herself had described bullying, which is true for the last 8 years. And I think there is, one of the TikTok content creators. I don't know if she's a really, I mean, she say herself that she's a big supporter of Harry and Meghan. So I won't say that, she's a scratty because she didn't describe herself as that. But I think it is important that, we play her.
Meghan Markle isn't one of the most bullied women in the world. She is the most bullied woman in the world. So during a recent visit to Girls Inc. in Santa Barbara, Meghan Markle's having just a very kind of candid conversation and explained that she has been subject to like awful online bullying, awful online trolling, and no news there. But somehow people are complaining that she's complaining about being bullied. Make it make sense. And all that does is prove her point. Meghan Markle is the most bullied woman in the world, and for you to be complaining that she's complaining about that further adds to the bullying. How about that? And the worst thing about it is that journalists have admitted it. So here we have Catherine Bennett, who says, tormenting Meghan Markle has become a national sport that shames us. So they're admitting that they do it. They're admitting that they have been tormenting and bullying her. And let me show some more. Let's not forget this Daily Mail article that came out pretty soon after Harry and Meghan announced that they were in a relationship. Harry's girls is almost straight out of Compton. Gang scared home of her mother revealed. So will he be dropping by for tea? It's bullying. It's racist language. It's dog whistling. All sorts of things. And you're going to complain that this woman is upset that she's being bullied because she is. And this was when? This was 2016. To date, we are now in 2024, and the articles continue. They haven't stopped. She has left. She's picked herself up and left with her husband and her children. She's moved out of the country, and the UK press continue to bully this woman. Then there's more. Take a second and read these headlines. It's madness. For anyone complaining that Meghan Markle is complaining or lying about being bullied, just open your eyes. This woman is the most bullied woman in the world for different reasons. I mean, you guys can have a chat in the comments about why she's being bullied. I think I know. I've spoken about Meghan on here before, so I'm team Meghan all day. I'm team Meghan and Harry all day. But for anyone complaining that she's complaining, you're part of the problem. You're probably a bully.
Exactly. And I think the question that she put in front of us is that, why do we think so? Because she thinks she have an idea. We think we have an idea. Every Sussex squad think they have an idea. And if you put all of it together and you started looking into it, there's so many things that stands out. But yet you go further, you're like, well, it just doesn't make any sense. Because one of the argument that, I did like to quickly put forward is because that, she's an American. So, the royal pretty much, the aristocrats, the anti-Americans. And I will argue that is such a, I don't know what, I will not curse here, obviously. I don't like cursing, but, it's a lie. Because we know in history, 100 years, like in the 18th century, you had like 100 Harris women from here in America have, become noble, that marry into royalty and aristocrats. And the reason why is because a lot of so-called, royalty and nobles people were running out of money and they needed money. And then you have these women over here or family over here that wanted that title, wanted to be a part of that culture, that life, have married into it. Like women, like for an example, you have God, what is her name again? Yes, Consuelo Vanderbilt. Yes, and I have Alberta, right? That married with the Montague family, the Sandridge, Earl of Sandridge. I think the reason why we now know Sandridge as is he's credited for that. Whether that is true or not, I don't know, but that's what they say. And to very recently, you have Julie Montague. I mean, she's this American girl, from Chicago, that who marry into the Montague, Sandridge family, that who is a countess, I think she is now.
Viscountess.
Yes, you know what I mean? Her husband, look, wonderful girl. In fact, she have come out a couple of times, and I was actually scared for her, actually, defending, Meghan, because I don't know anybody from that kind of world that ever come out. But I guess they try to see what was her point of view, given that, she's an American. Of course, she's white. But, it's not like the argument that, she, it's because anti-American. I don't buy it. Because, again, we can go even further, right? The kind of, what they had against Meghan, the fact her work ethic, sort of American women in general, we have such a work ethic. I mean, this woman, Julie Montague, I would argue have done so much for that world. So much for that world. Because she, somehow realizing that, how much, YouTube and all these people will probably save many of these chateaus and the manors and everything and whatever the case is. And there's the whole thing about it where now you can actually stay in these places. You can go and visit these places, sort of because they have to raise money. They have to have money to actually protect these houses. And so you can argue the idea of that, many Americans have done so much for the royals in, that kind of society at large. So then what then?
Yeah, exactly. It's not just because she's an American heiress, because there's a clear precedent for that. And thank you, just as a quick aside, thank you so much, Karen, for letting us know that the volume is a little bit low. I don't know if we can turn it up anymore, but we'll try to get even
maybe
closer to the microphone.
Can you raise? Or
it's
no?
all the way up.
I do. I need to be.
You need to be
closer to the
even
mic
closer.
And speak louder. Okay.
And I think that to your point, it's not the American excuse doesn't make any sense. There's clear precedent, and they weren't treated the same way that she's being treated. And as Jordan commented in her video, has been doing so for now 8 years.
8 years, and I think we need that kind of sound bite. It's one that we need to continue repeating.
Yeah.
Because I think it's very easy as though that, this is happening yesterday, or for those people that maybe sort of hasn't been following and understand, what's been going on. They're just new to it because now they just realize, okay, there's something wrong there. Maybe they think that, it happened last year or 2 years ago. This is 8 years.
Yeah.
And there's no sign of it stop. And this is why we try to figure out, why is that happening? Why is that is the case? Because all this woman is guilty of, it's marry a prince. So what is the problem?
And doing good work.
Right. And I think that actually we've talked about it in previous services, but it is worth reiterating as context to that question, is that when you look at what is going on with the tabloid media in particular, who is the one doing the majority of that coverage, it's not as if all the signs are rosy in terms of it being a good plan for them, good strategy. I think it was maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, Barron had highlighted this, and then we talked about it as well in terms of them, some of the tabloids closing up their shops in terms of their presence here in the States and actually retracting their operations. There's the idea of some of these headlines, yes, it being clickbait and maybe it drives revenue, but it seems like from the conversations we've been having, what we've been looking at, that maybe there's a question to, is it more?
We have to refuse this. We have to refuse that, because there's so many things that they can be doing that they will still have their clickbait and they will still make money. We need to call it for what it is. It's bullying.
Well,
And if this is not, then you need to tell me what it is, because as they try to defending it, they are doing it exactly like this women have saying.
Well, I think it's interesting, right? Because I think it's bullying, but I think it's also a bullying with a purpose.
With a purpose,
because
exactly.
I think what they're also trying to do is they're trying to force her to be quiet. They're trying to cage her, I think, because again, I think goes back to what we're trying to talk about, is they're trying to actually shape a narrative, and with her being out there as being so visible, it counteracts what they're trying to do.
And I will argue, based on current event, as I understand it, when we say silent her, and Harry himself have saying, it's truly silence her for her not to be here no more. And so for me, I needed to understand why is the case, what happened after that woman with that red dress saying something ridiculous that I'm no longer not going to support her because she wears
Because you wore the red dress.
the red dress. It was just so ridiculous. It sent me a head spin that I said, no. I need to know more. There's no way somebody who's a writer who make money can actually write something like that, and then nobody, like the editor or the paper that she print this and is not just say you fired. There must be more to it. And obviously I stumbled onto this documentary or whatever you call it, show. And then, it's like, give me that ah moment. It's one of those things in the walls of university, there always been this argument. There's always been somewhat conversation. It's like unspoken words, whether or not that, what things is been hating to us. Are we seeing what we see? Is it real? There's always that question. And I think a lot of professors sometimes sort of already say, be more, a little bit more of critical on your thinking and your essays and stuff like that, whatever it is. But there's many people that's fear, sort of to get into this conversation. And so for me, stumble onto this was just like, can he be? So let's
go
ahead.
and I think that's actually because I'm sure some of the co-hosts and everyone who's listening in are saying, okay, how does this conversation tie back to that word iconoclasm? And I think that's why this video that you found is just so absolutely brilliant. And
that's right, because it's explained to both words.
Right, exactly, and it connects the dots for them. And there's some clips that you've lined up for us to talk through for today's service.
That's right, because we won't be able to do the whole thing on one show, because otherwise it will be a 10-hour show. But we will split it into in a way we will continue the conversation, because I think later on, the writers and the people start talking about whether or not that, why.
Right.
That is the case. So,
and I don't remember who it was at the end of last service, but one of our co-hosts in the chat had actually mentioned one of the books.
That's right, referring to books. Yes,
that's highlighted in this documentary. And actually, I think Sylvia Fielder's been highlighting some of those facts that we're about to cover right now as well. But just to say at the very beginning, before we get into these clips, it is a video by a channel called Without History. Mm-hmm. And as you mentioned, Lady Sussex, would encourage everyone to
do your research and fully watch it. And, obviously, it's one of those things that make you go, Yeah. But obviously, it's not, conclusive. So there is more research. There's more that we need. But at least we could begin to maybe perhaps asking certain questions. And so let's get started with the first clip.
And I will say they did include all their references.
That's I
So
know
that's
they
a, so
did.
that's a
I know
big
they
that's a
did.
big thing. Is that
That's
if you
what a
can
big
say
thing.
whatever you want, but if you actually back it up with your sources,
Yes.
then that means the world.
But what I've learned is that in school you need to have as many
you need
sources
you need to have many sources as
possible,
possible, and so people can
because
fact check you.
sometimes
So that's
not
what it's about.
everything is printed and you have to do more research. It's opened the door to more research or more questions. So that's what I'll say. So let's start with the clip.
Talking about key Africans who have played the part in European history. Was it? I just want to ask a question right at the beginning. Have these people been written out of history? Have they been forgotten by most of us? And how hard was it to tease them out?
When historians show that the iconoclast movement was primarily an effort to remove all images and icons depicting black people in a position of power, or as deities, these historians are labeled as historical revisionists. And yet it is not just a few images that show that there was a substantial black nobility in Europe before 1453, but in fact, despite centuries of sustained effort to suppress and erase this African presence, there still remains a large body of evidence that still shows this.
Yeah. So,
And I think that is, to me, one of the things, like I said at the beginning of reading some of those sources, that there's this whole understanding and role of iconoclasm and its effect on history that goes above and beyond and is applied in different ways than just, the removal of religious figures and its potential impact on what is available today. And again, I mean, the narrator just tied the two ideas together in those opening remarks in terms of iconoclasm and revisionist history and how they interrelate in different ways. But it goes to what we've been talking about as being so important to the questions being asked today, what needs to be asked today as it relates to Meghan's treatment, and the understanding of the creation of those artifacts that will then be used for historians at a future date when they look back on
that's
what's
right.
happening today.
Again, for simpler explanation, if we are saying that, during around 14th centuries, we have all these black marbles, why are they not? Their pictures are not in museum currently. Why they're not in books right now? Why is it that, we are now trying to figure out whether it was or it wasn't? Why? And I think, we should go to the next clip. Let's go.
Historical revisionists, in fact, are those who have closed their eyes to the abundance of evidence showing that black people, in a second wave of civilizing influence, revived Europe and gave it the foundation for its renaissance. After having invented agriculture in 9500 BC, and after having spawned the two most influential civilizations in ancient times, Kemet, better known as ancient Egypt and Sumer, it is black Africans that injected into Europe and the Levant writing, science, religion, and culture. These were inherited by the Roman Empire, which then collapsed in the 5th century AD. And so began the long collapse of European society until the return of the Africans in the 8th century, when the blacks, this time, as the Moors re-injected into Europe, what ultimately became the spark of modernization. In the 800 years that the Moors occupied Spain, the ethnic makeup of these Moors changed over time. It is the early wave of these Moors that were the most influential, and it happens to be the same early waves that were in great majority black African. And they came in such numbers and with such knowledge that they gained significant positions of power in pre-Renaissance European history. And it is this group of black Africans that joined with the remnants of the first civilizing wave of Africans, a few of them still present in Europe. These two groups joined to form a new elite class throughout Europe. And you will see evidence of their presence through multiple artifacts and historical records today. When we show that Renaissance Europe was in great majority sparked by Africans, it does not mean that Europeans or Asiatics are not capable of civilization building. What we are showing, however, is that Europe of the Dark Ages benefited from the technology, science, philosophy, medicine, and architecture that were reintroduced by a majority black Africans elite in the early periods of the Moors, which transformed over the centuries into a nobility class with evidence littered all over medieval texts.
Again, isn't it incredible
it is one of those things where you hear that and you look at the evidence that's actually being cited and you evaluate and like, well, why wasn't that included more explicitly in the educational system that was set up? That's another question from watching it.
Which is exactly when I looked at Megan that walks in and what she represents, what she brought into the royal family. You know what I mean? And the fact this is not what we're talking about. What that woman have done so far for a very short time as a working royal. Her accomplishment, something specifically what stands out to me is the fire, where I think celebrities, royals have went there. And yet this woman like said, well, why don't we just create a book? And when you looked at the charities, the stuff that, this woman is doing, and truly really been doing before she married Harry, and what she brought in with the royals, it's almost like they try to erase these things right in front of our face. Right in front of our face. Instead of giving her credit. They were willing to lose the kind of crowd and groups that comes with Meghan that create interest. And again, you're asking why. And so we're going to go to...
Well, a thing to add on this, because what he just went through in that, and there's going to be more throughout the rest of the clips, I know.
That's
but
right.
it is worth highlighting specifically because so much of modern commentary around the treatment that Meghan is receiving is, some people, whether they agree with it or they call it out as the reason why it's wrong, is because of the fact that she's a biracial woman, that she's a woman of color.
Right.
And when you look back at the history and you look back at the results of iconoclasm, I mean, even just this image that's on the screen right now, that Duke Charles Louis Frederick of Mecklenburg, that he was a member of the Strelitz branch of the House of Mecklenburg, and he was the father to Charlotte. And when you look into the history, that shows that he actually was a swarthy, meaning
black, yes,
black person, and has been repainted to be white. And so that whole reality of Meghan's role and where she fits in this broader historical arc, and the treatment that she gets because of that, is entirely different when you look at it through this lens of how iconoclasm has played a role in whitewashing the sort of the blacks who were nobility and in positions of power throughout Europe.
Because there's no reason why we should not have more than what's giving to us really right now, or what we suspected, or sort of, just we don't want to talk about it too loud. So, so that the men in black doesn't come and get us or something like that. You know what I mean? It's just like, why? Why is that the case?
Well, I think it was,
and
I think it's pretty, unfortunately, it's fairly apparent, because it was truly what they have been saying, which is basically they were trying to whitewash history, is what that was, and they did it quite literally in terms of changing people's, like, repainting pictures and even eliminating and taking away other pictures that they couldn't. So I think is that they were trying to craft a narrative of what they wanted to be represented. So, and I think it's very interesting, because that also has direct parallels of what's happening with Meghan, of trying to create a picture that that's not true through their writings and through other things. They're trying to recreate what actually transpired, and it's the same playbook. It's the same playbook.
I wonder if it is fair to say, unlike the past to present right now, where maybe perhaps, or I don't know, obviously, I'm not 100 years old, that maybe there was not a pushback, so to speak, maybe, like we do really right now, and then maybe we are experienced with Meghan. And maybe that is the beginning, because we also see it's happening with our, vice president, sort of our nominee for president. I mean, obviously, we can see it happening. she goes from black and not being black. So it's like it is happening, but it seems to me there is a pushback to it. And then maybe perhaps we probably will be able to save or at least be having another narrative to what's printed, because really right now it's very hard to find, and the ones that that's available are just recently started coming out, but not enough to actually make the argument that we want to make to claim it, I will argue. So let's move on to the next clip.
In the book Memoirs of the Secret Service of John Mackey, he provides meticulous descriptions of many of the influential figures of his time. Of these, one of most interesting description is that of Mr. Methuen, ambassador to the King of Portugal. He is said to be a man of intrigue, but very muddy in his complexion. In his complexion and manners much of a Spaniard, a tall black man, 50 years old. Here the author gives us the general description of the man living in Spain, the one we call the Moors. In his own words, of his first account, they are tall men of black complexion. And this description of the Moors is not unique. As we saw, it shows up in paintings, it shows up in carvings, it also shows up in innumerable medieval texts. But the Africans were not the only Moors. Arabs made a good contingent of the Moor population, but the sheer number of black Africans as Moors caused the contemporary artists and writers to depict them as black with clearly identifiable black features.
Here we go again. I mean, they didn't have to say muddy, but again, here we go. Where are all these histories? Where are they? Why we don't know about it? Why is not being taught in school? And so for me, if you looked at that kind of, is that what we need to start thinking when we think of what's happening to Megan? How much race play a part of these people going after her for the last 8 years? Is it that's why they actually tried to do? That is the question that I have, because it just does not make any sense. But if you were to believe this author, you were to believe the discussion that is happening, then you're like, maybe.
It really does.
It's go ahead.
It really does force you to take a step back and examine the questions that you are even asking in the first place when you see that. And again, to the point of what you just said, taking this content creator who's put out this video, who's done his research, and to Charles's point, he highlighted his sources. And when you look, even briefly, you do see corroborating sources from other areas. But also that what you said, take everything and look at it without the full assumption that it is always coming 100% truth. But even just what has been presented so far in just these first 3 clips, the explicit nature of how iconoclasm could have come to life for black Europeans, black nobility in Europe, and what is now presented as a part of education to people alive today, and it is available through cultural artifacts. What is and what is not available, and you look at that, it really does force you to as I said, reevaluate the questions of trying to understand what's actually happening with Megan today.
That's right. Because I mean, we can even go further, even in for many of us in our lives that who are either biracial or simply a black person. If you're from anywhere part of the world, specifically in Europe, and somebody asks you where you're from, whether you say you're from London, you're from France, or you're from different part of Europe, people look at, no, you're not. No, you're not. It's almost like they want to say, no, there's no way that you can be English. There's no way that you can be from Ireland. There's no way that you can from France. You're not. And it's sort of always just bother me, because for many of so-called people that who call themselves English or call themselves French or who call themselves anywhere part of the Europe, usually is not even from there. You were just born there just like anybody else. So why is it about that, sort of me or anybody else that who looks like me, that we from a place, we grow up there, we went to school there, we identify with everything that country has to be offer, and then you're going to tell me that I'm not? It's almost like erasing the fact that sort of you from, or don't want to give you the credit. And I remember one of those hosts that who very often actually go after Meghan, and then was having a discussion of something that happened in the politics going on in England, and where he's actually was for the guy Cors, but he was saying that he's English because he's a man of color. And then the guy said, no, you're not. So the whole time he's tried to ask him, why am I not English? So it is still happening in all different type of form. When you say to someone, I am French, or I am from, London, England, or anywhere else in the world, and then you're not white, all of a sudden, no, you're not. Where actually your family from? And we see that very recently with this black woman, I think that, who was at the Royal, where, there was a curiosity, about her hair and things. I forgot her name. And it becomes a scandal, about that, whatever the case is, as if like where in Africa she's from. Like, sort of, it's.
Yeah, it's the others, right? They're
It's-
trying.
you
They're trying to
understand
paint
what I
people as others. And Majesty Sussex Report actually had a really nice comments, a couple of them actually. And this is what he says. He says, "You folks are hitting the nail on the head. Representation matters," which is what we're talking about at the essence. During colonization, the colonizers for decades told our ancestors that they were whatever, that they were ... And then he also mentions that the foundations of superiority of whiteness, which is basically what they're talking about. Like, this is what they're trying to construct, is that this is why they need to be exalted, is because of that.
That's right. So let's go back to the next clip.
Well, the
on
next
this
clip, I
yesterday.
think to segue from what you were just saying into that next clip, what's really compelling, and you mentioned this last service, is the questions about even the lineage and the British royal family itself. Because what you've just mentioned is and what Majesty Sussex Report also mentioned, as Charles highlighted, is the representation, even just among everyday people. But to this point also, it is not just everyday people, it's also specifically the nobility.
That's
and
right.
And the royal family.
That's right. Being very
Because-
specific of what they're talking about.
Absolutely.
Because it is of the upper echelon of what's actually, of who they actually value and what actually drives kind of their ideal and what makes up the ideal.
Go ahead for the next clip.
Because of the consistent iconoclast efforts, it is difficult for most to realize the true presence of Africans as nobles in Europe. It is even more difficult to admit the role of Africans as venerated deities. But that was precisely the intended outcome of the iconoclast movement. Masquerading as an exercise to remove icons altogether, its real objective was to redefine them. And I argue that this movement never really ended. It went from the destruction of black icons as early as the 8th century AD to a new form where historians are knowingly hiding notable black presence in medieval Europe. And what they will instead focus on are exceptions that happen to reinforce the narrative that black people only had a role of servitude. There is no better example for this than the transformation of Queen Elizabeth I from her first-hand accounts to her repainted figures. In the Calendar of State Papers and Manuscripts Relating to English Affairs on page 1058, when Ambassador Giovanni Michel writes, quote, "Of this sister of hers, I must remind your serenity that after the repudiation of Queen Catherine, the present Queen's mother, she was born of Henry VIII, and of his second wife, Anne Boleyn, an Englishwoman and of noble birth, although 2 years afterwards she was beheaded for adultery. My Lady Elizabeth was born in September 1533, so she is now 23 years old. She is a young woman whose mind is considered no less excellent than her person, although her face is comely rather than handsome, but she is tall and well-formed, with a good skin, although swarthy, end quote. And if you wondered what swarthy means in Old English, it means of dark complexion or black. And yet when we look at portraits and paintings for Elizabeth, she is depicted with the whitest of white skins with what happens to be curly red hair. Take a note of this, as it will come to be of importance as we progress.
Okay, so now we have a question whether or not Elizabeth I was part black or biracial. That is the question. And it seems like everybody's quiet.
It's quiet because it leaves you dumbstruck. Honestly, it really
That's
does,
right.
because you grow up and you go through this whole education system, learning all these massive historical figures, how important it is, and how many different places and representations in which they show up, all consistent,
And
then
who
you
she
find-
was.
and who she was, and at the height of power in the world in terms of being the British monarch. And then you look at a source, and you look at it. It is a primary source directly from that time, that uses, and it goes back to one of the premises of the show, the importance of words, describes her as swarthy.
Exactly.
And swarthy means dark-skinned, means black.
I think also it's worth noting about who Elizabeth was as well, because we're not talking about, Mary Queen of Scots. We're not talking about we're not talking about those particular queens. Elizabeth was one of the most successful queens
right.
in English history.
Exactly.
One of the most
my
successful
friend.
monarchs,
That's right.
generally speaking, the English has ever had. So she was the primary one responsible for the expansion of their empire. So it's just not anybody.
And so now you can start tying in. If we to believe the author, we believe the what been presented to us, then you can start understand why. I guess it makes sense. If everything is good is white, everything is bad is black, then why not sort of? And but what's so sad about the thing is that it's like you're looking at these images, whether on books or you get to go and see these statues or things like that, whatever the case is, and you stand it up in front of them, and then you are now wondering. Now it become curious.
And to that point, just to tie the threads to last week's word and to this week's word, it is you get a little bit nervous because that recognition that history is not the past, and history, our understanding of the past, is only recoverable through what we can actually access.
Actually,
remaining
that's right.
artifacts, remaining things that we try to interpret to understand what actually happened. But then you look at portraits of Elizabeth described like this, and how that is in direct contrast with other primary sources from that time that actually describe her as being a woman of color, a black woman, and you begin to realize that you have to question, you have to think through what's really going on here. And it does to the word for this week of iconoclasm. It is that recognition that, especially not just for everyday people, but for specifically people in positions of power, the nobility, the royals, those who were depicted as deities, that they fit within that category of what iconoclasm actually went after, because it is about icons. It is about those depictions that we venerate.
That's right.
And that movement of trying to remove icons is something that could have very well gone through and actually replaced all of those depictions of people of color that were in those positions of power. And to these sources, the fact that it is both destructive and transformative, it is creating something new and replacing it with a new depiction. And the last source, just to add in, because I think it's specifically interesting in the context of the portraits of the nobility that we have available today, and how they are frequently in contrast with the written descriptions of those individuals, is actually from this year. It's was published on August 15th by Matthew Willis in JSTOR Daily, and it's titled Painting Race. And it's not specifically about the word iconoclasm, but you'll see how it's related to those portraitures. It says, he writes that the defining of race by skin color becomes visible in European art of the 18th century. It was during that time that art, natural history, nascent anthropology, aesthetics, and colonial law converged, writes historian Anne Lafont, to establish and then stabilize color as the main racial marker in the inventory of human diversity. On paper and on canvas, a natural element, skin color, was quote unquote manipulated synthetically to the point of providing evidence or proof of human hierarchies. Lafont argues that artistic production and discourse in the 18th century produced tools of observation and analysis that allowed human beings to be differentiated as well as implicitly classified on a moral scale, an enterprise that would later veer into explicit racism.
Exactly. And when you think about what you are saying, what the author is saying, being icon, erasing icon, what are we now describing Megan to be? An icon.
Exactly.
An icon. And she is. She is an icon, whether or not that, you know what, with everything, the nastiness and, you know, all the horrible things that they've been doing to this woman, lead her to have that title, to be, you know, this icon figure that, you know, was known all over the world and admired by many of us. So, does that mean, how do we interpret the vulgarity, the name calling, all these things that they try to do to remove that icon, if we were to believe what we just read or listening to from the past?
Right. And so I clearly, as everyone knows on the show and everyone who's been listening to us knows, and I'm not an expert. And I don't claim to be an expert. I'm not going to say whether or not.
No, none of us here
right.
are experts. We're just asking questions and try to have conversation as we will have in a university or sort of, try to write a paper. Yeah,
exactly. So with that context of not being an expert, that is not weighing in to say whether or not this source is fully historically accurate or not, but to take it as a hypothetical, that if this were the truth,
that's right.
If this movement of iconoclasm to remove black people from the positions in which they actually held of power and of nobility, if that were the case, then it begs the question of, to your point, Megan being an icon today, do we need to think about the treatment of her in the context of a question of, is her very life, her very existence, the fact that she continues to be alive, something that forces people to actually revisit history and to think about how we actually got here, whether or not she actually is the first woman of color in that family.
Well, to that point, I mean, that's what we're doing right now. I think this is a real-time example of people not taking the historian's word for it and doing their own research and being able to come up with and draw their own conclusions from actual artifacts in history that's actually presented itself.
And exactly what you just say, that is so not only dangerous, that's horrible. It's just the fact that, you know what, we are beginning not taking their words for it, because in real time, they are changing things or say things that are not true, say things that, you know what, that's not finding. Like, for an example, that, Megan, it's sort of, demasculine, whatever. What's the word?
Yeah.
No, Harry. What does that even mean? How she's doing that? What part of their relationship that make you to be able to say that when you can very obviously see how happy this man is? Or them saying that, Harry is not happy, he needs to go, and this woman is holding him back. Or that, she's controlling of Harry. Oh, she's narcissist. Oh, it's like I'm running out of acronym or anything that, this woman have done or, is.
Yeah, but I think this is, for me anyway, this hypothetical, it helps to contextualize a lot of the questions that you've been asking, Lady Sussex, in a way that makes more sense. Because, Charles, that you're right, it is what we're doing right now, but I think it actually goes even deeper
further
in terms of the way that she's actually been treated and portrayed in the media. Is not just that it's been bad. It has been that there are things that are specifically oriented toward her not existing anymore. About her not being here, about actually whether or not they explicitly remove her from coverage as if Harry were alone, or if it is things that actually imply violence. There's this idea that if she is actually alive and who she is, that fact of her existence, what that forces so many people to do in terms of how they look back at history.
The biggest mistake I have made, it's that there was an interview that happened very early on, about their marriage. And that was really before I was getting to, into, to the successes, but it was what was happening. I couldn't bear it. And, I should have, sort of kept that, that interview, or sort of recorded it, whatever, in some, but it stays with me, and it's continue bother me. Sometimes even, I don't even know why it bothers me so much, to a point where, because I think now I'm understanding what the comment was. It's one of those people was having a conversation how that, the brothers, the only way these brothers, they will come back, being together, if one of their wife dies.
Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah.
And now, when you looked at everything that happened, you have watched the interview, you have listening to Megan, and you have listened to Harry. You see everything that happened, and you're just wondering, is that what they were looking for? Is that what they were trying to do? Because for many of them, the argument very early, and I could remember it very vividly, it was about that, oh, I don't give them 2 years. I don't give them 3 years. But of course, you're not going to give them 2 or 3 years if you're going to come at them the way you guys have been going and harass them and basically, put this woman to hell where she didn't want to be here no more. So now you started really understand all along there was that plan. Because they think that they can erase this woman. They're powerful enough. They're going to do everything that they can to drive this woman out. Because the problem is, in Harry, I will argue, in my opinion, if Harry did not leave with Meghan, there is a big chance she probably would not be here. Because of the access they probably would have to her to do anything they please. They please. I know it's harsh. I know that, maybe, I've gone too far. But it really sort of begged the question, why they're so eager to separate them? Because I know they must know that there is no way, even if something like that were to happen, that Harry would want to go back. In fact, I will argue that, God forbid something like that would happen where they would not be together. Harry, and then they will force that Harry probably would go and marry the darkest of women just to kind of get at them.
Well, what speaks to that as a little bit of a dog whistle, I think kind of at a bit of a bigger scale, is the fact that the press tends to always ignore and not say anything about the kids.
That's right.
And just erase the existence of these children. Like, they don't bring them up. When they talk about Harry going back, they don't say anything about Harry bringing his kids back. Like, they're just gone.
Yeah, they want to erase them.
And so that to me just speaks volumes of the fact that, okay, well, look, it's not about Meghan. It's not about her. It's about basically like what she represents.
Mm-hmm.
And they want to get rid of anything that has anything to do with what she represents.
At least in our opinion here, we don't know that for sure, but that's what we will argue. Because, if you think the fact that, when these kids were born, the fact that they didn't give them a title that they truly, should have. And that's one thing I probably had a problem with Queen Elizabeth, the fact that she didn't do that. But I'm sure, okay, she thinks, well, okay, I'm not here for long. Charles going to happen, and Charles will happen. And for a very long time, it wasn't happening. And it was great that to Harry to stand up and say, no, my kid's going to have that title. That is their birthright. And so it's probably not one of the most important, sort of a big move that Harry make, that I feel like, in my opinion, I feel like I know why he did that. Because having not done that, there would have been enough time to rewrite history. And it always constantly feels like, that's what they try to do. They try to constantly asking for Meghan title back. Even though if they were to remove the Duchess, that she still will be a princess. So really, there's no place to go. They can't remove the titles. they can't have them back, then what is next? And that is the question that, we need to start asking. Why this woman is been bowling every single day, 7 days a week, 365 days for the last 8 years. So let's move on to the next clip.
And if you are still doubting that Iconoclasm erased as many images of black nobility as they could find, here is yet another example. In the book Queen Elizabeth by Alison Weir, Sir Francis Walsingham is spoken of by the Queen as follows. Quote, Walsingham was nearing 40. He had been educated at Cambridge, Gray's Inn, and Padua, and become an MP. Later, he had come under the patronage of Cecil, who had offered him a post at court and later placed him in charge of his secret agents. Because of his swarthy complexion and black clothes, Elizabeth nicknamed Walsingham her Moor. End quote. As we have just seen, Sir Francis Walsingham was a Moor and was swarthy of complexion, but if you search for his images, this is what you get. Someone who is the farthest away from swarthy.
Again,
It's another clear example, and there's a lot. And again, that's why we'd encourage everyone to also, for those interested, to check out the video for much more of the actual images that the main
and do
author
more
put in.
research on that because it is available to do
Exactly.
lot more research. You're getting more in depth to that.
But this is also the one I had mentioned, Charles, at the very beginning of putting a pin in that idea of what you can go and search and what comes up, because it's very, very interesting. Because I just in prepping for the show and getting ready for the service, looking at even just what's out there, just to that point of go and search, just do a quick, even if it's a cursory search, just to see what comes up. And when you put into Google, this was the actual terms, Sir Francis Walsingham was black. That was the search term.
Really?
Put in, and just to see what came back, to lead the witness, so to speak, in terms of like, show me the pictures of him actually when he was portrayed as he was actually in real life. But what's interesting is that, as many of you will be familiar, there's new features that are being rolled out. We've talked about these new technologies and the impact that they have and the risks that they also pose. One of those things is the generative AI overviews that now Google provides at the very top of search results. That's in many ways can be very helpful because you get your information that you're looking for a lot faster. It comes through all the different pages for you, right? But and I will also give Google its credit that it does have a very clear disclaimer at the bottom that these things are experimental, and make sure you do double check that
That's
these
right.
things are accurate. So give Google its credit for that disclaimer and acknowledging that.
As well as this show, people that were listening to this show.
Exactly. But what struck me is that the AI overview that was generated for that search term, Sir Francis Walsingham was black, was that it says, no, Sir Francis Walsingham was not black, but Queen Elizabeth I nicknamed him her Moor because of his dark appearance. And that is next to the picture that's on the screen with him portrayed as a very white man. And it's honestly one of those things that we could have. There could be a whole separate conversation about that, just in terms of the being prepared for the technologies that are coming and how we need to manage them. Because if you're not paying attention, if you're not even reading the whole sentence or thinking critically about it, the fact that it is itself self-contradictory, if you just read the first few words, it says, no, Sir Francis Walsingham was not black.
Jesus Christ. Oh my God.
So do your
anyway.
research, but also to what you said, Lady Sussex. Be able to be very cognizant of your sources and what's actually being portrayed, even if it's not another human entity or institution, even if it is just because of the lenses of technology that it rolls through. Before
What
it
I
gets
will
to you.
say is stay curious. Stay curious. I think we should move on to the next clip. Let's go to the next clip.
It wasn't just England. The Black Moors were everywhere in Europe, and they showed up in very surprising areas. In the 10th century in Scotland, the king was called Dub Mac Mael Coluim. This is beyond interesting because the old Scottish meaning of dub is black, as you can see from this old dictionary, and in old Wikipedia depictions of the man he was shown as follows. But this has since been replaced. If you read on, you'll see that he was called the Black. Further to this, in the book The Mystery of Legends of Scotland, the author confirms the existence of purely black people. We see one of them in the person of Kenneth the Niger. During the 10th century, Kenneth the Niger ruled over 3 provinces in Scotland. The archaeologist and writer David McRitchie declared that the Moors dominated Scotland as late as the time of the Saxon kings. So late as the 10th century, 3 of the provinces of Scotland were wholly black, and the supreme ruler of these were the Black Kings of Scotland. You will also note that Scottish royalty was intimately related with English royalty through various bloodlines. On the European continent, we continue to find influential black figures throughout the Middle Ages. In 16th century Italy, we find the medallion depicting an unidentified European king. In 12th century Italy, Moorish philosopher Ibn Rushd, here depicted. And the Black Moors didn't just become kings and queens in Europe, they also show up as rulers of the Byzantine Empire in multiple instances. Like Nikephoros II Phocas, emperor of Byzantium from 912 to 969, he is described in the Relatio of Luitprand of Cremona as, quote, very bristly through the length and thickness of his hair, in color an Ethiopian, one whom it would not be pleasant to meet in the middle of the night, end quote. And yet this is his depiction, really nothing like the man. Here again we see the iconoclast at work, but where they changed some icons, they could not get all the references.
Here we go.
Exactly, and I did want to actually read one comment from Connie here. It should be noted that the Charles is an avid historian, and he has spoken about the historical significance of historical figures, aka English being white figures that Meghan is, and therefore Meghan is a historical threat.
That's right. That's right. So it will be interesting because what we want to do is, as you see, we will continue next week, sort of having that discussion, because I think this is the last clip from that until next week, right?
Yep.
Am I correct?
Yes.
And so it's really now I want to know and see what my co-hosts are talking. How do they feel? How do they receive what we put forward, and what is the conversation?
No, I think this great conversation. V. Brahm actually says this is very interesting.
It is. It is very interesting.
And I think there's a lot of commentary just about the fact of, this is not new news to them, that they see this a lot and that it's disturbing about how that's more or less kind of the way that it's been going down. And it's great content to kind of keep this in mind as we're, thinking about the relationship of the media and Meghan.
Yeah, because I think for me, what makes this so really important, if we were to believe this, and maybe there is a way to begin to understand and know how to push back, although I believe we have done an incredible job. But when you have an idea, sort of what the enemy or what people are trying to do, then you know how important it is to protect these images, like whether or not that on what Meghan wear. You understand what I mean? How do we protect that, and sort of how do we protect their kids and everything else that they are about? Do you understand what I mean? Because it is so very difficult for me to get these royal Yodas.
You got it right the first time.
Where they're coming from, when so many of it just absolutely don't make any sense.
And I think, I'm the sense I have from, there's a few, like, as Charles mentions, people like Sylvia Field, who's at been at examples throughout the conversation of this type of historical whitewashing, that type of trend of what iconoclasm could have done in terms of its removal of these portraitures and the true history, maybe the true past, what actually happened and how it is portrayed in modern history. But I think to the way that you've brought this together, Lady Sussex, is again as that broader historical arc of context of trying to really understand what doesn't otherwise make sense in terms of how Meghan is being treated. And Meghan specifically. I mean, it is. I mean, Harry has his own sort of dynamics with the media, specifically because he was born the second in line to the throne. He was, as he let us know and as he called out, this deliberately meant to be the spare. And so there is always something that's going to be coming with that. But in terms of Meghan's treatment specifically, it has been different.
Yeah, because I mean, they will argue, or the argument will, no, it's not racist, it's because she's American, or they will say, well, she's not the only woman, that they done that to, Princess of Wales now, which is Kate, or they done that to Kamala, or sort of, Diana. In fact, Diana even, pay, her life. I mean, she's no longer there. So no, it's not, we can't say that. But this is the problem they have. Once they try to compare whether Diana or anybody else, guess what they're not doing? And what they haven't do? It's erase who Diana is. Because as far as I'm concerned, in fact, Diana is now have her statue at Kensington Palace and the Second Garden.
Sunken Garden.
Sunken.
Yeah, Sunken Garden. I think that's what I said. Did I say sunken?
Yes.
Okay, Sunken Garden.
Sunken.
So really, they're not trying to erase what she looks like. They're not trying to erase, and they haven't done so. Yes, they will argue. They will say now that, she was crazy. They will say that, she was paranoid. They will say that, try to not talk about what she's been through to the media. But what they are not doing, it's erase her image. In fact, very often they will quote that, oh, Kate is, oh my God, look at Kate. She is like, honoring Diana. Oh my God, is like, we can see the difference. And that is the difference. Spite of, although Diana paid the ultimate price with her life. But what they not try to do, and what they cannot do, is erase her who she was.
Well, and I think this may be, if I remember correctly, what you shared in terms of how you wanted to bring this life. Maybe is the clip after the next.
That's
one,
right. Absolutely. I was going to get to that.
But I will say the way that you even put that, the difference in yes, Diana's got her treatment when she was alive, but especially what has happened today is it's not even about her Diana being erased. It's about the way the media treated
That's right.
her is what's
Exactly.
being erased.
Exactly. And so for me, but if you were to compare Diana and Meghan, then you will have to go to Prince Harry, the Duke, and hear what he has to say and how the two of them link in history. And so let's play the clip and let's hear Prince Harry on his own words.
Well, I will say, just to interject just very carefully or quickly, I just find it very interesting in terms of when Diana did actually pass, what she was actually doing at that time.
As I said again, we have to listen to the clip because that is,
We'll get back to that there.
Harry make the argument.
Okay.
And before you hit play, just so you have time to process this, so you're not freaking out afterwards.
Don't.
You're gonna get totally nervous. But you asked the question, so I'm gonna tell you is that when you asked what's going on in the chat, how everyone's doing, that Royal Sussex has shared that he's doing getting a lot of work done, and that he's asking us to please keep talking because this is very important and great content. Very interesting.
Thank you so much.
Important content.
Thank you so much. Thank God we are digging. But anyway, so I think it is really important that, we go and listen to Harry because I think he put it in a way that we cannot put it. And those are his words. And so when you think of Diana, the price she paid, and one will argue why, then you will understand once you listen to Prince Harry. So let's go. Hit it.
On our first morning in the new house, she reported abdominal pains and bleeding. Then she collapsed to the floor. We raced to the local hospital. When the doctor walked into the room, I didn't hear one word she said. I just watched her face, her body language. I already knew. We both did. There had been so much blood. Still, hearing the words was a blow. Meg grabbed me. I held her. We both wept. In my life, I've felt totally helpless. Only 4 times. In the back of the car while Mummy and Willie and I were being chased by Paps. In the Apache above Afghanistan, unable to get clearance to do my duty. At Notcott when my pregnant wife was planning to take her life. And now. We left the hospital with our unborn child, a tiny package. We went to a secret place only we knew. Under a spreading banyan tree, while Meg wept, I dug a hole with my hands and set the tiny package softly in the ground.
This is actually was the wrong clip because, before, we go to that clip that I wanted to play, I thought that we were playing. That's probably the last clip, but this clip is about the loss. Because obviously this week was miscarriage weeks, right? And so for me, what I was reflecting on this week, how horrible what happened to Harry and Meghan is. Because it's very easy for us to forget that, what happened and how much they endure. And specifically when you looked at Harry, the loss of his mother, and now the loss of a child, which is very often don't talk about. Even from us, we don't often actually sort of highlight that, the price that he paid. And yes, Meghan is a part of that who lost a baby because of the vitriol, because of the harassment, because of the bullying that happened. So when you start thinking about that, what they have already taken away from them, what they have taken away from them, and no answer, no sort of, that's why I was a little bit really kind of insulted, on a tweet that was sent out. And I think I respond. I don't think nobody sees it. But it was shocking. The lack of accountability, the stress. What caused perhaps maybe why she lost that baby. And so we have to look at it as a loss. And when you hear what he says, what that can do to someone's mental health. Because that kind of loss, you will constantly have to deal with it. And it's something many women, they know about. Of course, she was fortunate to have Lily. But I'm sure there's not a day that they don't reflect, they don't think, what if? It's still a loss. So we have to really put in on context what these people have done to this woman. It's not just the fact that she didn't want to be there. Thank God there was not succeed of doing so. But they still find a way to take something away from. And some people will argue, perhaps maybe they will try that with, Archie. Because again, to back where we started early on the show, is that there's not yet an explanation what freaks them out in their home with Archie and his nursery that caused them to literally panic. And that is the word straight from Harry and Meghan. To the fact is that, a fire, thank God for this woman. Her quick thinking say, let me take that baby with me. That God, I don't even want to think about it. The fact that that kid, there's a chance that he would not be here. And you could see one of the things that we didn't know at the time. If you go back, you watch that video during that tour, you can see it in Meghan's face. You could see the concern. You could see the fear. And I think a lot of decision, I have a feeling probably was like, we got to get out of there fast. In my opinion, obviously, I don't know that for sure. But we will go back to the original
Well, before
point
you,
that I was trying to make.
yeah, but and before you do though, just because it ties to the broader conversation of iconoclasm and what images even did end up getting through when it relates to the depiction of youth in particular, is that the black depictions in the art of that has survived, I guess, those various centuries, that has depicts English nobility and royalty. There is only depictions surviving when it comes to for the large part. There's obviously these samples that that are highlighted as contrary, that prove the case, right? That highlight the case. But the youth that do, in the vast majority of those depictions, they are in positions of servitude or poverty, or almost as if there's sort of this white nobility saving the young black child kind of thing.
That's right.
And a totally different relationship of how even just the depiction of youth. And you think about Harry and Meghan's kids, who are in line to the throne. They're part of that family, and they have those titles. What it means for them to have a mother who's biracial, and for they themselves to have that sort of lineage, to have even who their grandmother is. Like, what does that mean? And so you look at it in the context of, I think, as I forget who added it in terms of our co-host now in the chat, it was Cookies and Cream, actually, saying the Unroyals took Meghan's name off of Archie's birth certificate and tried to blame Meghan, and they couldn't remove her from Lily's certificate because she was born in the U.S.
Absolutely.
And you look at those actions with Archie, with Lily, and the fact that there was a miscarriage, that they did lose one. It does, again, tie back to this question: does it need to be reevaluated when you do look at the broader, longer historical
But again, we can even go further, because now that you are saying this, and I'm remember the fact that in the birth certificate they didn't even have Meghan's name on it.
Right.
What does that mean? They completely remove the woman's name on her own child birth certificate. Not only make that make sense, but as we are doing this particularly word, you can't have but asking the question, is that the reason why? Because it just now dawned to me that they actually did that.
Yeah, and think about this conversation we've been having is about not even what sort of those documents and commentary mean today. It is the recognition that they are also the creation of the artifacts that will be used by historians of future generations. And you look at what is one of the best sources of information for a historian: birth certificates. That's exactly what it is.
It makes you wonder, and I'm just going into, sort of the limb here, or, sort of maybe in a ridiculous place, that it makes you wonder if the purpose of the reason giving these kids, they come out, maybe not what expected, since their concern was what color the kids are, they come out white. It's at some point in history, by erasing her of that birth certificate, they will have a very different person that is their mother.
Well, I just think it leaves it open for flexibility.
That's my point here.
Yeah.
That's my point here. And so for me, again, to go back to the whole ridiculous whether or not, sort of this didn't just only happen to, sort of Meghan, it happened to Diana, which I said one thing that, they didn't do and did not do, and they didn't erase, Diana kids, or try to erase that, or not acknowledge, her kids, and they certainly not removing her image. And many people will argue that, the only reason why the Windsors are who they are in English is because of Diana, and I don't think they try to do that, even though they have done so much. But there is places where you could link Diana and Meghan, and I think that, Prince Harry have made that argument, have seen it, and I think we just need to really listen. So now we're going to play that clip.
Family is, there was no option to leave. Eventually, when I made that decision for my family, I was still told, you can't do this. I was like, well, how bad does it have to get until I am allowed to do this? Well, she was going to end her life. It shouldn't have to get to that. Do I have any regrets? Yeah, my biggest regret is not making more of a stance earlier on in my relationship with my wife and calling out the racism when I did. History was repeating itself. My mother was chased to her death while she was in a relationship with someone that wasn't white. And now look what's happened. When we talk about history repeating itself, they're not going to stop until she dies.
Exactly. Excuse me, I apologize for, the sound and the fact that, it wasn't the best clip, obviously. And thank you to whether Scotties or people that, who are fan and Harry and Meghan that all keep putting on these short videos, which is where I get it from. But when you listen, because I was looking to see where that interview was taking place so I can have a better versions of it, but I couldn't. I didn't have enough time. But if you're hearing what he says, at the time, his mother was dating a man of color.
And look what happened to her.
And look what happened to her. And so, and you hear from Harry onwards that they will not stop until they see Meghan dead. And for him to say that and spell it out, and it's not the first time he says that. Like he said, he knows what behind the curtain. He knows what behind the curtain. And the question is, why, if it's not what we've been talking about throughout the show, try to erase this woman and history? If not now, at least for later.
Yeah, honestly, that clip, and we should maybe in the next service or at a future date play another one where it's a little bit easier to hear the whole thing. But what Harry was saying, and just calling it out very bluntly,
That's right.
It is in terms of history really repeating itself and not stopping until she was dead, and not having to ask the question, do I need to get to the point where my wife is willing to take her own life, and actually acts upon that before I can take my family to a place of safety? That it is like, maybe because it has been happening for 8 years, that there is a sense of this is what it has been, and there's a sense, almost a false sense of normalcy, just because it has been so long. But if you really do take a step back, you say, what would possibly make that make sense? It's really, again, when you look at the longer historical narrative of what's going on, it does force you to reconsider what's behind it, what's actually happening, what's the reason for the degree of the treatment.
And as I said again, there's three things that stands out as I'm doing this research, and now that seems to start making sense for me in a way that never before. It's what I mentioned earlier, the fact that that conversation of that, Harry will be back if one of the wives die, to Jeremy, what's his last name? Clarkson. I can't wait to parade her around. To these whatever this hosts, who once said, throw them out the balcony. Think about this, guys. And that's on live televisions. This is on papers.
And there's one other thing from just our co-hosts that sparks to what you were just talking about a moment ago, to build on it in terms of the difference between Meghan and Diana, is that I think Majesty Sussex and Sylvia Fielder were talking about it. Sylvia is saying that she actually remembered at the time in the news what they were covering was the fact that Diana was dating a person of color.
Yeah.
And alluding to the fact that she might even be carrying his child. And this is I don't
We don't know,
right?
but yeah, there's speculation on that.
But if again in this broader historical context of how iconoclasm could have been used, the threat isn't Diana as much at that point. The threat is the fact that she was
whether or not, and
dating that
and
man.
also to whether or not.
But before you go on,
Yeah.
to that point, the reason why it's interesting to in this moment right now evaluate when you're comparing Meghan and Diana is that exactly what you said. Diana is not being erased. Her history is not being forgotten. Her as a person, she is constantly evoked.
Mhm.
But she is not evoked in a way that highlights her relationship with
That's right.
that man, that individual afterward.
As a matter of fact, not too long ago, there is this argument that he Doty father, that somehow he was a child. I don't know if I'm getting it correct. Please let me know that somehow that he was doing things that were wrong. There's a lot of accusation about this man, which was not current, that then happened when he was there. And it makes you wonder, even if in that place they tried to erase that figure, because who he was, this man, and how much he went after the royals, and the fact that he had owned and was the owner of one of the biggest real estates in England. It makes you wonder, even if that's not what they try to achieve with all these accusations, that when this guy cannot even defend himself or speak for himself. And so we are going to leave it here. We will continue that conversation next week, if God willing. So we're going to move to verse.
Oh, yeah, one more clip. Are you skipping it?
Oh, there is. Oh, that's right. The last clip that we want to play for you guys. Well, Charles is making signal. It's like, I got things to do. So no, the thing is, what I'm saying is that, again, it shows how this woman, it's not only, it's an icon, becoming icon, and the two of them together, is doing so much incredible thing, and somehow it's really backfiring on the media, and they have not been able to succeed on what they try to do. And I think this content creator, which all of you are familiar with, it's what's his name again?
Ministry of Hacks.
Hacks. Some are really good. And sometimes for me, that's what gives me a little hope that they're not going to be able to get away, of removing this woman, of history. So let's play the last clip.
Well, we all know that together or separate, Meghan and Harry have always been able to break the internet. But huge thanks to Sussex Spartan Meghive, follow him, her on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, for putting this amazing montage together. That just shows you across 14 days the power of Meghan and Harry, and just how much they can convince the media, whether the media loves them or not, to follow their every move. But my question for you today, get your critical thinking hat on, is this. What would the British working taxpayer-funded royal family have to do to get headlines like these across the space of 14 days? Can they actually do it? Do they want to do it? What would they have to do to shine a light on all the things that we need to talk about as a human race to get coverage like this? My opinion, never shy about giving it. Thanks for following my channel. I don't think they want to do it, but even if they wanted to do it, I don't think they know how to do it.
I will argue that, I'm not so sure anymore whether or not that, they don't know how to, because there's so much opportunity has given to these people. And in fact, what is happening to Harry and Meghan is because they know what they're capable of. They can see what's happening. And so to me, there's something bigger at play here, why it's not stopping. Because it's not even no more about whether or not that, there is this, invisible contracts. I will argue right now, I'm studying passing that, because they haven't been getting good press. If the whole idea is about good or bad press or things like that, how they have presenting Charles, except for that woman, to, Harry's brother. I will not say that's favor. But then why? Do you understand what I'm saying? If their whole argument and everything, whatever the case is, there is that, which I believe there are. It's not that I'm saying there's not. But what I'm saying is that, you know what? If there's not something else at play here, I would call who I need to call and say, okay, all these bad press need to stop.
Well, the fact is, you would have done something.
You would have done something.
Well, regardless of what it
correct
is,
it.
you would have done something. And I think we can all agree that if there was actually a concerted effort to protect and defend and make sure that they're in the place where they felt protected and safe, that there would have been some action taken, either in front of the curtain or behind the curtain. Something would have happened to have changed and remediated the situation, and it didn't.
There is so much that we don't know. But I am curious. I think it's quite interesting conversation. I thank you guys for helping me, because sometimes I feel like I'm going insane, sort of, it's like I'm writing up papers and try to sort of, because, you know what I mean? It's tough. And thank you, co-hosts, for holding it up and with me and support this channel. So let's move to verse.
Sure. Let's move to Bible verse. This particular Bible verse is about perseverance. And it's interesting. It's interesting just in the context of this discussion. Romans chapter 5, verses 3 through 5. Not only that, but we rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope. And hope does not put us to shame, because God's love has been poured into our hearts through the Holy Spirit, who has given to us.
Amen. And Josh.
There was, I'm going to ask you before jumping into prayer, if you have at your fingertips the remarks about one person being able to start a movement. It was something that Megan was sharing, actually.
That's right. But we will play that clip.
You want to play that?
Begin next week.
Well, I bring it up just because for the prayer today and coming out of this service and sort of this look backwards at history, for everyone to be given the clarity to recognize where we are in our relationships with each other, what we need to do to care for each other today, but also that we are the inheritors of our ancestors and our forebears and the history that has been passed down to us, and at the same time that our actions today are creating the history that our children, our grandchildren will inherit. And to always remember that even as individuals that are not in the royal family, even as just members of a Sussex squad, or even if you're just someone who's watching and how you choose to act throughout the day, that you remember that you have that influence, you have that ability with the decisions that you make to create a better historical narrative, one that is more inclusive, equitable, and just. And that it is not necessarily easy, and it is not going to happen in and of itself, by itself, but that it takes a concerted effort by all who are interested in realizing that outcome. So with that, a prayer for clarity, a prayer for information, a prayer for sources that we can rely on in terms of our information, and always a prayer for safety, specifically for Prince Harry, Princess Meghan, and their entire family, for Mama Doria and their 2 children. Knowing that they are in the spotlight, in the limelight, they're using it for good, but that comes with its own risks. So we always keep them in mind.
And then also, again, it's really probably our prayer. It's more important now when you think about the role the Sussex squads play. Even in that context, putting data out, keeping the media not being able to get away with statements that's untrue. something startled you?
Something startled me, and it's, as always, the culprit said with much love is Church Nelly, who reminded us in the chat that it is actually a prayer of happy birthday wishes to the candidate for president, Kamala Harris.
That's right. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday. And I know I'm going to be praying. It's one of the thing that I pray, because obviously, you have family members and you just never know who knew that, my aunt was not going to be there. And God willing that I can share this moment with my mother. And I try not to talk about it. I try not to think too much about it. But I know what it would mean to be able to share this moment, to see a first woman, not just any woman, a biracial woman, become the president of the United States. The power in that, what that would mean moving forward. I don't know what it would mean, but at least, like the previous co-host say, right? Presentation matter. Regardless what happened, what she's able to get done or not getting done, that is not the point. The point that you can dream. Just like with Obama, many of young black men or parents, when they say to their kids that, you too can be president, and actually based on truth. And there is something even deeper, more profound for me, not just only as a woman, but as a black woman, that was so important to me, because I remember when I used to look at MTV, the way black women used to always portray, very sexualizing, very the black girls always the one that, when the stripper idea and whatever, they not that I have any problem with strippers at all. And the light-skinned girls was always the one that, those, music videos and stuff like that. And they used to have these music videos coming in, which I'm not supposed to watch because I was a little bit underage, but I'm sneaking with my friend who no longer hears Stevie to actually, he will show me or whatever. So have you, but anyway, so that's another story. But it was disgusting, so to speak. It's almost like, black women was only good for one thing. They were over-sexualizing them, or that, we are uneducated. And it wasn't until, and we have really, powerful black women, especially in the fashion world, that Naomi Campbell and, of the world, and some sort of, but again, beside that, you didn't see it until Michelle Obama comes. And all of a sudden, the game has changed. And I see the change even in black men. How they seen dark-skinned women. I've seen it in our community, how we've been spoke about. I mean, there's a lot need to be done. Absolutely. But I think seeing Michelle in the White House, at least for me personally, and I don't want to cry, had changed the game. Has changed the game for me. And so I will leave it like that. And again, I want to continue praying for clarity. I want to pray for the Sussex Squad, because the work that, they are doing, we are doing, it's so important. That's why I'm so grateful for Baron that comes out every single day and fighting, to Claire, to Duchess of Sussex, to Miss Rose, I think Lady Rose, I think. And I mean, whenever it comes to that, I'm always forgetting name, but there's so many soldiers out there. And it's almost after this show, you're starting realizing how important the presence of the Sussex Squad is for historian for history, and how important Harry writing when he wrote Spare is. So may God bless you all. Happy Sunday. Good day, and God willing, we'll be with each other again next week. Love win always. And we will have our worship song like we always do later on this evening or this afternoon. Goodbye. Good day. Love you all. May God bless you all. Happy Sunday.